Hey guys. I'll be out of town for a few days. This is part 7 of What If Naruto Realized His Full Potential. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 19, Mount Kunguran, Mount Myaboku. The great toad sage of Mount Myaboku looked into the great spherical crystal before it, eyes squint and webbed hands moving in a rhythmic motion. Through squinted eyes the great toad sage observed Uzumaki Naruto flying on the back of an unusually large falcon. The times are changing. What do you mean, Ajiji-sama? Gamabunta regarded the revered toad patiently. What do you see? See for yourself, child. Look into the sphere and tell me what you see. The toad chief did as told and beheld the crystal with trepidation. Uzumaki Naruto, Jiraiya's student and Minato's only child. Oh, but he is far more than that, Gamabunta. He is also the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko. The chieftain added. The great toad sage gave a croaky, senile laugh. I believe this boy to be the one he told me would one day come and would change this world. Who is he, Ajiji-sama? Gamabunta asked. Do you mean to say Naruto is the child of prophecy? But I thought as did I, Gamabunta, but I have dreamt of this child. I have seen glimpses of what lies ahead of him, and I cannot shake this odd feeling. I have not felt like this for centuries. The great toad sage shared cryptically. The falcons must have known. Gamabunta swelled with no small amount of anger. That is why they were so open to allowing him sign 2 contracts. It wasn't out of respect for us. Do not blame the falcons, Gamabunta. The squinting toad whispered tiredly. Have you forgotten that we all await this world's savior? In the end, what does it matter what species we are, what clan we belong to? All life will be in perilous danger one day. We must seek to understand and help one another before it is too late. I understand, Ajiji-sama, Gamabunta said and looked at the crystal sphere once more. If he is truly the savior you have prophesied, then the road ahead will be long and arduous, as it is for all heroes. Konohagakure. Moments after Naruto and Hiruzen left the skies of Konohagakure, 12 shadow clones of the aforementioned blonde plummeted to the earth, swerving past one another as they descended at rapid speeds. All right, don't forget, one Naruto clone shouted to the others. We each pick one of our friends. I've got Sasuke, who made you the boss? One shouted back. Just pick someone and go. The first clone ignored its copy. All right, Shin-Sho. By means of the propulsion palm technique the clones began to descend ever faster as streams of air fired from their hands, allowing them far greater control to the point it appeared they could fly. One clone stuck his tongue out to the rest. Smell you later. I'm clearing this before any of you do. The hell you are. Naruto and Hiruzen, traveling by falcon was far less comfortable than expected. While it was certainly faster than any other means he could think of, at the altitude they were flying, the wind roared constantly, and the cold threatened to freeze them alive. Every now and then Hiruzen would exhale a small stream of fire as part of a chakra manipulation exercise to keep himself warm. Naruto had made numerous attempts to emulate the old Kage, but with limited success. It was to be expected given his affinity lied with the wind, which was naturally weak against fire. Rubbing his arms he watched as Hiruzen exhaled more fire. Gigi, if you don't mind my asking, what's your affinity? I'm guessing it's fire. Hiruzen showed an amused smile. My affinity lies with fire, that is true, but as you may have already started to notice, some elements may come easier to you over time. You've been a shinobi for what, 80 years? The god of shinobi's smile faltered. I am 69 years old, Naruto-kun. He corrected dryly. Right, and you've been a shinobi for almost as long, and they don't call you the professor for nothing, so would I be right in assuming you've mastered all the elements? Naruto asked after doing the math both aloud and mentally to greater detail. You would indeed. Hiruzen nodded. That is quite impressive, Hokage-dano. Sazuru commented. The falcon has spoken very little since their departure. Naruto wasn't quite sure if he would work out as a familiar. Gamahiro was a toad a few words too, sure, but at least Naruto knew he could hold a conversation. The stronghold of the apes is not far. We will arrive in approximately 1 hour. Naruto stroked the bird's feathers. They were soft and comfortable even at their altitude. Have you been there before, Sazuru? Only once, he answered. Father took me on my coming-of-age flight. We briefly stopped to greet the great Monkey King, Enma the Righteous. He was very hospitable to my father and I. 1. Gramps. He turned to Hiruzen as his last conversation with the Monkey King came to mind. When Tsunade Basin came to see you, Enma-chan told me he used to look over me when I was a newborn. Is that true? Hiruzen regarded him with a sad, nostalgic smile. It certainly is, he answered, nodding. I had a village to rebuild and old responsibilities to assume once more. Enma wasn't too fond of being tasked with guarding a newborn child, but he took a liking to you. It was stories like those that made Naruto feel odd. He felt small but also happy that somebody had been protecting him. Why do they call him Enma the Righteous? He decided to ask to distract himself from the odd feeling. If I may answer that question, Hokage Dano? Suzaru asked of the Sandaime. Hiruzen simply nodded and went back to exhaling small bursts of fire to keep his body temperature up. Our world is no different from yours in many ways, Naruto Dano. While most kin live separate from one another, there are laws we must all abide by. In the interest of avoiding unnecessary conflict and bloodshed, a council of 12 judges known as the 12 Deva was put together by 12 representatives of the most influential species. It is the 12 Devas' duty to rule justly and objectively, for they are the one universally recognized authority amongst all animal kingdoms, and they hold the power to put to death anyone who violates the laws they have put in place. 2. To say the least, Naruto was absolutely shocked to learn such information. I had no idea, Suzaru. I just assumed you kept to yourselves and just did whatever was natural. Your species tends to assume a great many things, Naruto Dano. Contrary to what you may believe, we are not as uncivilized as our unintelligent counterparts. We too desire peace and order. Quite clearly, Suzaru was offended by his ignorance, but made no further comment on it. Of the 12 Deva, Monkey King Enma is the leading and most respected judge. His influence is unrivaled in the animal kingdoms. Naruto refrained from sharing that he thought but all animals belonged to one kingdom to avoid further offending his summon. I should stop calling them that, he decided then and there. Suzaru, can I ask you another question? Of course. The falcon permitted. My godfather. It felt odd referring to Jiraiya as such. He's the Toad Sage. Does he have any connection with the 12 Deva? Suzaru caught in laughter, as though he had posed a foolish question. It certainly made him feel that way. Forgive me, it was not my intention to offend you. The bird apologized. To answer your question, yes. If your godfather is the Toad Sage, then he belongs to the Sage Order. That sounds kind of badass, he thought aloud. Suzaru let out another amused caw in response. He told me a little about his duties as a sage, but can you explain it to me? Very well, his feathered companion agreed. The Sage Order was created by the 12 Deva many centuries ago to act as an organization that, somewhat like the 12 Deva, united representatives of all species to act as agents of peace. You may think of them as a police force in a way. The sky was beginning to clear now as they left a congregation of clouds and soared across a vast stretch of blue. They must be pretty strong if they're supposed to police you, huh? Certainly. Only a select few of your kind have the potential to become a sage, and even fewer survive the training, Suzaru informed as he adjusted his wings. All sage candidates tend to be what you refer to as S-ranked if I am not mistaken. No surprise there. Jiraiya said he once fought for the Toads against the Hawks. Are members of the Sage Order allowed to do that? Naruto asked as he remembered the particular anecdote his godfather had shared with them on their mission to find Tsunade. So it is Jiraiya the gallant you referred to earlier. It wasn't even surprising anymore that the perverted Sannin had a reputation even in the animal kingdoms. While it is not necessarily permitted given the purpose of the Sage Order, it is not at all uncommon for a sage to side with his allied kin in times of conflict. Ashamed as he was of his previous ignorance, Naruto was very interested in the politics of his familiar's world. The Sage Order had caught his attention. It certainly sounded like something he wanted to learn more about. I guess you had to pass up on being one, Jishin? He asked, looking at the professor. It sounds like a lot of hard work, but it must be worth it. Hiruzen's expression turned grim. Members of the Sage Order have to make a great many sacrifices, Naruto-kun. While they serve a noble purpose, they still hurt the people closest to them by becoming one. He didn't realize it at first, but it came to him quick enough once he put two and two together. Jishin. Konohamaru's dad is a sage, isn't he? Kane, my eldest. Hiruzen nodded with thinly veiled resentment. He is the ape sage in my stead. Is that why he's never around? Konohamaru never mentions him. As much as he liked to think of the brat as a little brother and a student, they had rarely spoken of anything too personal. I'll have to fix that when I get back. Konohamaru-kun was but an infant when his father left, but it has scarred him nonetheless, Hiruzen told him. His mother passed away due to complications during childbirth. She was a kind but frail woman. Of course, I never told him this, though I suspect he may already know and blames himself on some level. If there was one thing Naruto had wished he didn't have in common with his discipline, it was that they had both lost their mothers on the day of their birth. He's a tough kid. He has you to thank for a role model, Naruto-kun. I hope you will continue to look after him after I am gone. Naruto shot the Sandaime a resentful glare. Don't talk like that, Gigi. You're going live for a long time. Hiruzen smiled at that. But if for some reason you can't do it, you've got my word I'll look after him. He promised. He can be a pain in the ass, but he's like a younger brother to me. It puts me at ease to know you think of him that way, Naruto-kun. Hiruzen said. Don't mention it, Gigi. The remainder of their journey was uneventful and for the majority silent. Naruto tried using fire manipulation a few more times to no avail, but fortunately the skies turned a little more favorable and warmer. He spoke a little more with Suzaru on the topic of the animal kingdoms, the 12 Deva and the Sage Order, but it soon became apparent his new familiar didn't know the answer to all his questions, instead suggesting he ask Hyutsune the next time he called upon him. Naruto had to admit Suzaru was growing on him. He was a little stiff and not one for idle conversation, but he could respect his sense of duty to his clan. Their journey appeared to have come to an end when a vast mountain range came into sight. It seemed to travel forever, going higher than even the clouds. The stronghold of the apes. Suzaru presented informatively. I can take you to the top of the summit if you wish, Uzumaki-dano. Naruto is not here as a visitor. Hiruzen interjected, much to the blonde's confusion. We will start from the bottom and make our way up. Naruto's eyes widened. Are you kidding me, old man? I can't even see the mountaintop from his altitude. It'll take us days to climb the mountain range. If you manage to reach the foot of the highest mountain within a week, I will be impressed. Hiruzen said with all the seriousness in the world. The old man held his gaze. Surely you didn't expect this to be easy, did you? He shook his head dumbly, and resigned himself to the old Kage's words. Take us down, Suzaru. Hold on tight. We will be descending rather quickly, Naruto-san. Having never flown on a falcon before, Naruto didn't know what to expect as his new familiar tucked in his wings and veered down. The next thing he knew, they were free-falling in a nosedive of such speed Naruto would have surely fallen off if Hiruzen hadn't held on to him long enough for him to stick himself to the predatory bird. The wind blew in his face and rung painfully in his ears. He could tell Hiruzen was trying to tell him something, but he could not hear any of it due to the screeching wind. Naruto's knees began to buckle and his stomach churned with nauseated imbalance. He didn't know how much longer he could take. Fortunately, as soon as it had happened, Suzaru barreled upwards and leveled with a might caw. Not long after, Naruto was on his hands and knees, emptying the contents of his stomach. First-time flyer? There was an amused tone in the falcon's voice. Naruto merely nodded and continued to hurl whilst Hiruzen calmly climbed off of the summit's back, seemingly unfazed. Thank you, Suzaru-kun. You saved us quite a lot of time. How the old man wasn't as nauseous as he was, he had no idea, and he was too dizzy to ask. Thanks for the ride. He managed between vomiting and holding up his thumb to convey the rest. My pleasure, the falcon responded dryly. Call upon me whenever you need me, Naruto-san. Suzaru took his leave a second later, disappearing with a sizable burst of smoke. Naruto emptied half of his water container in an effort to get rid of the taste of his own sick. Once he regained his bearings, he looked around and noted they were in a valley of mountains that stretched further and higher than his eyes could see. The humidity was moist and hot. The weather was far too warm for wearing a cloak. In some places, steam appeared to billow from the ground itself as though they were on top of a sealed volcano. Now that's a scary thought. I'm afraid there will be no time for rest, Naruto-kun. Hiruzen bit his thumb and went through the required seals for a summoning jutsu. Placing his hand on the ground, he called out, Kuchios no jutsu! Enma appeared as soon as he was called upon and met them both with a welcoming smile. Hiruzen, my dear old friend. It is good to see you on your feet. How are you, Enma? Hiruzen asked pleasantly. The blonde had to admit, as odd as it was to see the old Kage embrace his summon, it was rather heartwarming. The two of you are really chummy, huh? Naruto said. That is to be expected. Hiruzen and I have fought side by side for well over 60 years. Enma replied as he let go of the Sandaime and approached the young Uzumaki. We have been expecting you, Naruto-kun, Konoha-gakur, Tsunade-sama. The Godame looked up from her desk and regarded Shizen with a look of annoyance. What is it now, Shizen? They had moved back to the Hokage Tower soon after Naruto and Hiruzen left the village, and of course, a mountain of paperwork her assistant had forgotten about awaited her. Her assistant had a smile on her face that hinted at good news. The standardized medical ninjutsu test results are in. Tsunade raised a curious eyebrow. She had actually forgot about the test. It made her feel rather old, to think she could have forgotten about something so important to her, the full implantation of a medical ninjutsu practitioner's training program. Well, don't beat around the bush. It was a huge success, Shizen exclaimed excitedly. 17 out of the first class of 20 passed the minimum grade. 12 achieved the predicted grade average, 4 passed with above average scores, and 1 candidate passed with a near perfect score. The Godame's eyes widened. A near perfect score? It was not her intention to make light of the others that had taken the test, but she had not expected anyone to come anywhere near full marks on a test she had written herself. Are you certain? Shizen nodded, her smile persisting as she read from her clipboard. Haruno Sakura achieved full marks on the theoretical test and a 93 on the practical. She has excellent chakra control, however her chakra reserves couldn't maintain the basic jutsu we taught them, so she said had to take more than the allowed ration pills. It's impressive nonetheless. Tsunade leant back in her chair and rubbed her chin deep in thought. With a proper diet and rigorous training she could expand her reserves. I thought so too. Shizen agreed. Do you wish to speak to her in person? No, Tsunade said at first. Hold on, she said a moment later. Haruno Sakura is one of Kakashi's students, correct? Shizen nodded affirmative. How long until Kakashi is fit for duty? At least another 2 weeks, Tsunade-sama. Shizen answered after paging through her clipboard. He is currently undergoing intensive rehabilitation. The Slug Princess took a moment to consider the situation. Her being Hokage had come with a lot of responsibilities, some of which she had expected and many more she hadn't. While she did not regret donning the same hat her grandfather, granduncle and sensei had all donned before her, she lamented the fact she could not train the new generation of medical ninjutsu practitioners herself. Thankfully Shizen was there to administrate over the training program. Her assistant had long since become a skilled medic herself, and was more than qualified to do so, yet Tsunade could not help but feel a little resentful, cheated out of the experience to see her ambition come to fruition by her own hand. Her first apprentice no longer needed her. But here there was a young kunoichi with talent and potential lacking the direction and guidance necessary to fully realize both. Jiraiya, it looks I'll be taking a page out of your book. Tsunade-sama? Shizen asked expectantly. Yes. Tsunade smiled thinly. Send Haruno Sakura over when you see her. Perhaps her assistant caught on, judging by her knowing smile as she made a note on her notepad. We will be announcing the results later today. I'm sure she'll be there. Good. Tsunade nodded at her. Now tell me about the other candidates, including those that failed. We should write and survey to collect data to improve the next class. Konohagakure Hospital. Beep. 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 The machines attached to Uchiha Sasuke via all manner of tubes and wires beeped like a lulling metronome, as they periodically displayed the unconscious teenager's heartbeats per minute, oxygen intake and other pertinent information. Sasuke's eyebrows furrowed as he stirred awake with a raspy groan. His throat was dry and sore. His entire body ached with pain and discomfort, and felt like it weighed a ton. He tried to speak, but he was far too tired to do, and thus simply remained in his bed, staring at the white ceiling. I'm in the hospital? He raised his head as far as he could to look and found the room to be void of other patients. He was alone in here. With great effort, and a biting pain in his chest, he sat up in his bed and continued to blink in an effort to adjust his eyes to the light. Sasuke remained sitting up in bed as he tried to remember how he had gotten there in the first place. The nightmares. Atachi, about time you woke up. The Uchiha's eyes refocused and widened slightly as he looked at Naruto standing by his window. The blonde held up a greeting sign. Yo! They stared at one another in momentary silence as Naruto approached his bedside. You're a clone! Sasuke deduced from the simple fact the blonde was dressed for travel. Yep, the Naruto clone confirmed as it poured him a cup of water. The real me already left the village. Sasuke downed the cup of water hungrily and waited for the clone to refill his cup. Why? He asked after he finished his second cup. His voice still hurt, but his curiosity was greater still. I've got a lot to tell you, Sasuke, so listen closely, the clone said as it sat on the bed. Your brother came after me because he's a member of Akatsuki. Akatsuki? They're an international crime syndicate involved in a lot of bad stuff. The clone explained briefly. And they're going to be coming for me. His former teammate looked at him confused. The real me will explain why when he gets back, but for now just listen. You're going to train, aren't you? The Uchiha sounded suspicious of him, almost as though he was accusing the blonde of a crime. That's why you left the village, to get stronger. The Naruto clone nodded in confirmation. Before I left, I spoke to Mitarashi Anko, the proctor from the Chunin exams. It was impossible for anyone to have run into Anko and not at least vaguely remember her. She used to be Orochimaru's apprentice, and she has a lot of experience in controlling her Juinjutsu. Sasuke glared daggers at the clone. Just hear me out, it said hurriedly with its hands raised. She's going to teach you how to control it. Kakashi-sensei is probably going to be out of commission for a while, so I'd at least give it a try. You and I both know that seal has got you slipping, whether you want to admit to it or not. I don't need your help. Sasuke threw off the blankets and moved to get out of bed. As soon as he tried to walk, he fell to his knees as his legs gave out under his weight, though the clone caught him. Let go of me, Naruto's clone sighed with a strained expression. Listen, you can either keep being a jackass and slowly lose your mind, or for once in your life, you can admit you need help and accept what's offered to you. Sasuke moved to punch the clone to disperse it, but it effortlessly caught the Uchiha's wrist and gripped on to it tightly. You'll never beat me if you keep this up. The Avenger opened his mouth but was cut off before he could say anything. The simple fact is that I'm stronger than you, Sasuke. The clone laid it out bluntly. I'm not the type to sugarcoat stuff, you know that, so let's get that straight. You've got a problem you need to fix. You'll never manage to catch up to me if you don't. Anko is going to come by soon and you're going to accept her offer to train you. Don't consider this me pitying you or doing you any favors. I'm looking out for my own interest here, and for that I need you to be able to fight with me, side by side. It was a lie, but one that spared Sasuke's pride. Despite the fact they tried to kill one another, despite the fact their dynamic had changed, on some level, he still regarded the Uchiha as a friend he cared about. Not that he would ever admit it. Why would I fight with you? Sasuke demanded as he pushed the clone away. Naruto held his gaze calmly as he answered. Because Atachi's going to be coming for me, and if you want your revenge you might as well stick around. Sasuke breathed heavily, holding his aching chest. Explain. Mount Kunguran Valley. Naruto looked around him in the valley as Enma spoke to him. The mountainous terrain seemed to stretch on and on into infinity. He frowned with light confusion. Aside from the sky, there was nothing else to be seen. Only the dry, cracked earth upon which they walked, which was suspiciously hot for some reason. You were expecting me, Enma-chan? He asked the Monkey King. Enma nodded and answered in his deep voice. Hiruzen sent word you would be coming here for training. Yeah, though I was going to train with the Sarutobi clan, Naruto said as he looked around once more. Gigi? Hiruzen smiled knowingly as Enma provided the answer. The Sarutobi clan is one of humans and apes. Enma provided explanation. Generations upon generations ago my kin and that of Hiruzen formed in companionship to last for all eternity. Naruto's eyes widened at that fact. He would defy anyone that would fault him for his surprise though. I never knew. I intend on teaching you a great deal more while we are here, Naruto-kun. Hiruzen pointed towards the sky, or more specifically, the high mountaintop that went up beyond the clouds. Our journey is not yet finished. We will be making our way up to Kongarinzen, the stronghold of apes. 3. I thought we were already where we needed to be, Naruto said confused. Enma and Hiruzen shared a knowing smile. You are standing in the valley on the threshold to our stronghold, Naruto-kun, Enma explained. No student here has ever been allowed entry into our stronghold without crossing these perilous lands first. Appreciating the remaining distance to Mount Kunguran became all the more easier for Naruto now he realized he had to get there on foot. So, I have to climb that entire mountain? That's going to take me days, weeks, Enma corrected confidently. Do not misunderstand, Naruto-kun. We do not allow anyone that climbs to the summit Kongarinzen to train with us. My kin will be ready to challenge you on the way to test your character and ability, be it in direct combat or by interfering with your progress through trickery and sabotage. At that moment, Naruto noticed several new presences. Monkeys and men alike began to appear in the mountainous valley, maintaining their distance with curious looks in their eyes. He counted several dozen of them and felt a sudden pressure, a strong anticipating sensation he couldn't quite describe but knew he had felt before. From a cursory glance he noticed they all wore Konoha headbands. One rather large Sarutobi grinned in his direction along with his equally huge ape familiar, a gorilla at least 3 times his size and in height and width. A moment later they disappeared from his sight, leaving Naruto utterly perplexed but relieved. Did they just size me up? Naruto-kun! Hiruzen called his attention once again. Your training has already begun. I will be waiting for you atop of MT Konguran. I advise you to be careful at all times, Enma said gravely. It immediately prompted Naruto to appreciate the weight to every word the Monkey King spoke. These lands lie upon a dormant volcano. Its unique ecosystem has become home to a great many species, the vast majority of whom are carnivores. The Jinchuriki gave a heavy nod. This is going to be tough as hell. The Sarutobi clan members have been instructed to go at you with the intent to kill, so do not respond with anything less than that, Naruto-kun. Hiruzen informed seriously. Naruto swallowed nervously and nodded. Alright, Jishin, I got it. I think. He was rapidly losing his confidence but refused to show it. He never wanted to back down from a challenge, and he wasn't planning on starting anytime soon. I guess this is the part where we say until we meet again and good luck, huh? That it is, Naruto-kun. The Sandaime smiled and turned to Enma. Let us go, my old friend. We will await you at the top. Naruto reached for his bag, took a deep breath and then exhaled. I'll see you there in a week. A week? Hiruzen asked. A week, the young man repeated with absoluteness. I've got people waiting for me back home, Jishin. I'll get through this and anything else you can throw at me. He began to advance towards Mount Kunguran at a purposeful pace. Just watch, old man. I'll complete my training in 1 year. Hiruzen and Enma watched him go with matching pensive expressions. The Monkey King turned to Hiruzen with an amused smile. It took you 1.5 years to complete your father's training regime. If Naruto-kun completes it before that, he'll have beaten your record. He'll do it, the god of shinobi said confidently. You should return to the summit, Enma. I'll be grateful if you spare me the journey and reverse summon me to you. Of course. Enma nodded. The Monkey King disappeared in a burst of smoke. A few moments later, Hiruzen disappeared in a burst of smoke of his own. Elsewhere, Sasaki Genji scowled as he walked along the dirt road along one of Sound Country's lush forests near the border. The swordsman wore a cloak with a hood and moved at a dutiful pace. After a mile or so he turned to a beaten path that ran into the forest. Sasaki could hear the stream of water, and his nose took in the scent of various plants. It was nearly half an hour later when he arrived by an abandoned shrine hidden deep in the forest. Though he had not felt it, he knew he had crossed at least one barrier by the time the shrine came into view. The arachnid laid a hand on the hilt of one of his swords. He sensed no one in the vicinity but knew that the person he had come to see was far too adept at hiding their presence for him to detect. I'm here, Sasaki called out impatiently. Come on out already, master. I wasn't followed. One can never be too careful, my little spider. A deep voice rang condescendingly. Sasaki scowled and released his blade. If I was followed, you would have known by now, wouldn't you? I know you've got at least one barrier set up. 3. The disembodied voice correct. See, I didn't even know that. Sasaki continued to scowl. He is going to notice I'm gone if I don't return within the hour. From behind the shrine a low, seemingly stooping silhouette appeared. Then it's best I hear you report now, said Akasuna no Sasori, Mount Kunguran Valley. Gee, it sure is hot. Naruto wiped the sweat from his forehead as he continued to make his way to the base of Mount Kunguran. His eyes had deceived him. It was a lot further away than he had thought it would be. He reached for his canteen of water and pressed it to his lips, emptying the remaining contents. It had only been an hour since he had set off by his lonesome, and he had yet to encounter any of the Sarutobi clan or the other creatures that supposedly lived here. A few times he had felt as though he was being watched, but he knew if he tried to look they'd bolt or mask their presence, so he didn't bother. He held up a one-handed hand seal. He was getting better at those, and his cheeks swelled. Miserapa. He refilled the contents of his canteen with water he created from converting chakra. At least I'll only have to keep a mind on food. There was a definite bright side to being an Uzumaki and being a Jinchuriki to boot. He had more chakra than he knew what to do with, and thus where others would have to keep a mind on their reservoirs, he could just convert his when he needed some water to drink or a fire to keep warm. Not that he would need to keep himself warm in this place. It was sweltering hot and humid, annoying so. Every now and then steam would burst from the cracks beneath him and douse him in hot vapor and obscure his sight. That's it, he decided once his shirt had begun to cling to his back, disgustingly moist with sweat and uncomfortably tight. He dropped his bag on the ground and took off his cloak and flak jacket. Little did Naruto know that as he was changing, several silhouettes of various sizes began to shift around outside of his view, patiently waiting for something. After a few moments, Naruto managed to take off his shirt, leaving his chest bare but for the sleeveless body suit that covered him down to his calves. If he wore a face mask, he could probably pull off a young and blonde Kakashi. It brought a smile to his face. As he went to put away his discarded clothes, the cracked earth beneath him began to heat up. What the dash? Steam erupted around him and enveloped him in a deep fog. At the same time, the silhouettes pounced and dove into the fog. Sensing danger, Naruto allowed his instincts to guide him and managed to avoid several direct hits. It was surprisingly easy to dodge his attackers, far too easy. Repusho! He thrust his palm before him and blew away the steam with a continuous stream of air, uncovering several small monkeys taking his belongings and running. Run for it! One of the rascals shouted. As they disappeared in several directions, Naruto ran after the one that had his flak jacket. Hey, that's my stuff! Stop! He didn't expect them to do so and thus wasn't surprised that they didn't. Shunshin no Jutsu. Speeding up significantly momentarily, they managed to close in on one of them and grabbed his flak jacket. I'm going to kick your little monkey asses, you'll have to catch us first. The cheeky little ape responded as he dashed away and met up with his friends on top of a mound. A twisted rage took Naruto as they continued to provoke him by waving his belongings in the air. You've done it now, you little brats! He shouted, holding up his go-to-hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu! 6 clones appeared and rushed alongside him. The monkeys scattered with squeals of playful delight as a clone went after each one. I've got his sword! One of them cheered. One of the clones leaped at him. Not for long, you don't! It missed but set off after the young ape. Come here! Naruto and his clones pursued the little rascals but found it became apparent that retrieving his belongings was easier said than done. He was certainly faster than the little thieves, but whenever he came close they would move in unexpected ways, weaving through bursts of steam that left scalding marks on his skin. Fuck! He swore as held his face. What's in this stuff, poison? Don't you know anything, mister? One of the monkeys asked as it jumped on a clone's head and continued to move evasively. The steam can mix with some of the plant roots and give off really funny effects. Yeah, didn't you know? He's dumb. Yeah, stupid. A bulging vein on Naruto's forehead threatened to burst. Okay. He breathed heavily in a dark voice. I was going easy on you kids, but if you don't return my stuff to me now, I'm going to make you pay big time. How scary! Naruto formed several hand seals and finished on the tiger seal. Doton, Doria Taiga no Jutsu! Converting his chakra, the blonde spat a continuous stream of fast-spreading mud. His clones followed suit moments later, following his lead by using Earth Flow River Jutsu of their own as they circled the monkeys. Haha! They can't aim at all, as if you'll catch us, idiot! One of the monkeys had the audacity to grab a handful of mud and fling it at them. Naruto and his clones endured their antics for only a moment longer, as the others joined in. By the time the smartest of the youngsters realized something was up, it was too late. You guys, wait a minute. Oh no, the mud! The mud had already hardened and it was too late to escape. Naruto and his clones began to advance on the juvenile apes with matching demonic looks on their faces. Time to teach you kids a lesson on how to treat visitors. Wait, you can't hurt us, we're just kids. Yeah, no fair. I was told you were going to come at me with the intent to kill and that I should return in kind. Naruto replied as he cracked his fist ominously, his face threatening to split by his sadistic grin. Now then, I hope for your sakes you have no regrets. Mount Kunguran. Hiruzen and ANBU were viewing the crystal ball before them with matching unnerved expressions as the blonde teenager talked towards the monkey children. ANBU-sama, I think he's serious. One of the spectators commented. The ape's human counterpart shook his head and let out a laugh, patting his animal counterpart on the shoulder. No way! He's just going to give those kids a scare. Right, Hiruzen-sama? He added nervously. Hi Hiruzen-sama. ANBU turned to his lifelong companion. He's not really going to hurt them, is he? Naruto-kun can be particularly vindictive. Hiruzen disclosed dryly. He won't do anything too outrageous to them. He quickly added. At least I don't think he will. Mount Kunguran Valley. Minutes later, Naruto cracked his hands once more. Now then, I hope you kids learned your lesson. The next time I won't be as lenient. The 6 child monkeys were all sporting matching bumps on their heads. Yes, Naruto-sama. They mumbled in unison. That's better. The Jinchuriki said as he picked up his sword and tied it across his back. That was pretty smart what you did with that earth jutsu, Naruto-sama. The smartest of the bunch said. We totally fell for it. I didn't, you fell for it first. As they argued amongst themselves, Naruto's eyes narrowed as he looked to the distance. He was by no means a sensor type, but something didn't feel right. He couldn't put a finger on what it was, but he felt as though there's something out there waiting for them, something dangerous. You should head back home, he said firmly through their bickering. Go on, quickly, why? The leader of the bunch demanded. He had an air of petulance and defiance about him that reminded him of Konohamaru. Yeah, why do we have to go? I don't want to. You're not the boss of us. They jumped at the sight of him reaching for the bandage-covered makeshift hilt of his kodachi. Are you brats even supposed to be out here? Not really. The most timid of the bunch admitted. Why did you tell him? He'll tattle on us. I won't tattle if you go home. Naruto promised, eyes still narrowed and the unsettling feeling in his gut persisting. Now go. Fine. One by one the monkeys disappeared in tiny bursts of smoke. When they all disappeared, Naruto unsheathed his sword with one hand and proceeded to roll out one of the ceiling to scrolls attached to his midriff to store his clothes and bag. As soon as he finished, a gigantic scorpion erupted from the earth. It was positively huge, almost as wide as Gamma Hero and 7 foot tall. Its pitch-black armor steamed and shined as lava dripped from it, and the arachnid's stinger dripped black acidic fluid. Naruto leapt back several dozen feet with a chakra-enhanced jump as the scorpion's stinger dug into the earth where he had just been standing, ripping it apart. You are one ugly motherfucker! He shouted as the scorpion's pincers widened and bared its face and teeth. 4. As will you soon be, human, so you can talk. The Jinchuriki readied his blade and gave the beast a good look over. From the looks of it, its armor was tough as hell and highly resistant against fire. They weren't shitting me when they said I had to be careful. Arrogant little fool! The scorpion spat venomously. I had a craving for ape meat, but you will have to suffice. Just for that, I'm going to find out how you taste once I'm done squishing you. Naruto shot back. Though that would be a lot easier said than done. The scorpion looked like it could handle itself, not that he had any particular experience fighting giant beasts capable of human tongue. I'm going to need numbers to beat this thing. He momentarily placed his sword in his mouth and made a hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A dozen Naruto clones appeared by his side, wielding his perfect copies of his razor-sharp kodachi. Haze, I'm buying you a drink when I get back, he thought as his clones followed his lead and charged the sword with chakra. Mount Kunguran. Hiruzen raised a curious eyebrow. Chakra flow? I had no idea he was capable of that. It appears Naruto-kun has some tricks up his sleeves. Enma commented with a thoughtful look at the crystal ball before them. It was a fairly large sphere roughly a foot tall and wide. By now many more of the Sarutobi clan, both the humans and the apes, had come to join the view. Damn those scorpions! One of the monkeys shouted heatedly. How long are we going to have to put up with them, and Osama? They clearly came here to devour some of our kin. Indeed, let's not get carried away. One of the human Sarutobi clansmen said. No one was hurt, so let us be grateful for that at least. Hiruzen smiled at the human Sarutobi. Well said, he said approvingly. Enma will see to it these lands remain as peaceful. What I am more worried about are the children that went out on their own. Another argument ensued regarding that particular topic. That's underhanded of you, uncle, distracting them like that. A large and brawny Sarutobi clansman remarked. My old man used to say you could be manipulative. Oh shush, Kajiro-kun. The professor waved dismissively. Kajiro thumped his chest. Kaigi and I can go down there to help the kid out if you want, uncle. He's not doing so hot. You will do no such thing, Daichi-kun. Hiruzen asserted calmly. This is part of Naruto's test. If he is to train with us, he should be able to make it here by himself. Mount Kunguran Valley. Black acid rained down upon Naruto, prompting him to place his hands on the ground and erect a wall of earth. He had neither the time nor the experience required to make a dome and thus curved it to increase its effectiveness. The scorpion charged with fury. He reacted by jumping back but not before scattering several kunai and explosive makibishi behind the wall he was forced to abandon. He held up a hand seal and set off the explosion. Yum no hara! The explosive tags and makibishi did little else than stopping the scorpion in its charge. Chi! It turned out his field of dreams was a one-time wonder. It had worked like a charm against Sasaki Genji, but the beast before him clearly had far superior durability. It's almost not even fair. And I used up the last of those makibishi too. The scorpion was moving again, this time even angrier than before. The explosion had done little to hurt him, causing only mere discomfort that lasted no longer than a few seconds, but its pride was injured. I'll stop you dead in your tracks this time. Naruto absent-mindedly performed the required seals for his next jutsu. Dotan, Doria Taiga no Jutsu. Taking care to up the moisture of his technique, he spat a river of slippery mud that forced the scorpion back. He couldn't keep up the jutsu for much longer, as it was difficult enough to breathe in the humid valley without producing a stream of mud. He couldn't use the earth beneath his feet either, since not only was there a dormant volcano below them, The earth was so dry and hard it would take him too long to convert even a tiny amount of it. The black scorpion thrashed angrily against the inevitable stream as he caught his breath, and quickly created another 2 Kage Bunshin to keep up his efforts while he tried to come up with a better plan. An hour in and I'm already fighting for my life. This place is something else. Several miles outside of Konoha, climbing mountains was a feat no ordinary man could perform with ease, not without proper training and experience. To some the climb came natural, as though they were guided by an invisible force, instinct perhaps, that allowed them to find footings and ledges seemingly without trying or much effort. Unlike their civilian counterparts, shinobi were trained rigorously in physical activities from a young age and were expected to be more than capable of climbing mountains. In fact, they were capable of climbing without their hands through the means of chakra manipulation. Of course, mountain combat was another manner of thinking. For that, the shinobi forces tended to have special departments with ninja trained specifically to carry out their missions in rough terrains, much like the Marine Division of Konoha, whom were all experts in combat at sea. Konoha's foremost mountain experts were the Sarutobi clan. They always had been and most likely always would be. The Sarutobi clan was gifted with strong affinities to earth and fire and bodies that were capable of remarkable acrobatics like second nature. Still, Hatake Kakashi had his doubts even they would find it so easy to climb a mountain with one arm tied behind their back and a no chakra usage handicap to make it all the more challenging. When he was a youngster, Kakashi managed to climb the very same mountain with one arm under 3 hours. Now, nearing 30, he wasn't as young as he once had been. He was near the peak of the average shinobi lifespan of the Warring States period. 5. How strange would it have been to live in those days? A time before the great 5 shinobi villages. A time before the Uchiha Senju meld that gave birth to Konoha. They must have been exciting times to live in, not to say the copy ninja wasn't living in exciting times now, but he would have relished in the opportunity to see the Shodai Hokage in combat, the god of shinobi before the Sandaime. Focus Kakashi, the son of Konoha's white fan, reminded himself, as he felt his grip grow lax. It'll be impossible to find a better footing now, I have no choice. Taking a deep, calming breath, the Jonin closed his eyes for a moment and focused. If Guy were around, the exuberant taijutsu master would have surely chastised him for what he was about to do. Kaimon Kai! Energy surged through his body as he released the gate of opening for a few seconds, dimly reminded of the last time he used it to cheat on the very same training around the time he taught the Chidori to his Uchiha student. Might as well use it while it's still open. Through opening the gate of opening, Kakashi's body overflowed with raw energy that easily allowed him to traverse the remaining climb with powerful dashes. The scarecrow flew over the top of the mountain by a few feet and touched down gently. It's unlike you to take the easy route, Kakashi. Kakashi found himself looking at a man in ANBU attire with a rooster mask from which long black hair flowed upwards. He was tall and fit with a lean, muscular build and carried a sword on his back. Shuichi-sensei. I abandoned that name a long time ago, Kakashi, the ANBU operative said as he sat on a nearby boulder. You used to be quicker. I used to be younger, Kakashi replied as he caught the canteen flung his way and poured water of his head. Rooster crossed his arms and stood up as Kakashi sat down and locked eyes. Flashback. Kusa no Kuni. A young Kakashi was sat on the ground hugging one knee to his chest as his eyes unfocused, lost. You said you didn't see who killed these Kirinin? Kakashi shook his head, subconsciously clenching his fist. No. His voice broke, strained by his grief and effort to hold back his tears from flowing again. The ANBU operative gave a sigh and turned to 2 medic ninja standing by the body of a teenage girl. This is not the time or place for a field autopsy. Seal up the body. We will escort you back to camp. I had no choice, Kakashi whispered quietly, pitifully. He pressed his head against his knee as he continued to mumble to himself. I had no choice. I had no choice. You served your country and village. The ANBU droned simply in between of signaling to the other members of his squad. The enemy did not get their hands on the PC. Kakashi's head snapped up, his one natural eye bulging with outrage. Precious cargo? The ANBU captain turned away. Let's get ready to move out. Where's my backup squad? The young copy-nin scrambled to his feet, intent on lodging a kunai in the back of the ANBU's skull. It was foolish, of course. Even a prodigious young jonin as himself couldn't take on an ANBU captain. Nonetheless, the grief-stricken son of Konoha's white fan gave it no thought and moved to attack. Sensing his intent, the ANBU captain looked over his shoulder, not in the least intimidated but curious what the youth would do. Her name is Dash. The young jonin felt a hand on grip his shoulder. Nora Rin, said a newcomer. He was a tall ANBU operative with a rooster mask. Behind him stood a fresh squad of ANBU. Shinobi Registration 010885-6, Chunin ranked combat medic and member of Team 7 led by Namikaze Minato. And you must be Hatake Kakashi. Rooster, you're late. Rooster nodded. We ran into an enemy platoon setting up a shrapnel cannon. We eliminated them before rerouting here. He looked down to Kakashi. I'll keep an eye on this one, Raven. Let's move out. End flashback. Sandame-sama has taken Minato's son to Mount Kunguran, a quite unexpected move on his part, maybe. The copy-nin watched the ANBU operative stand by the edge of the cliff and look out into the distance. Why are you here, Rooster-sensei? Rooster undid the clasp of his mask and bared his face. Kakashi. You haven't called me that in a long time, Kakashi. Rooster had a smooth, pale skin unmarred by any scars or signs of aging, and a strong jaw. His eyes were onyx pupilless eyes. Come back to ANBU. Come back? Kakashi raised an eyebrow as he pulled at the hem of his face mask to air his face. Very few ANBU left the obscure organization, and even fewer ever returned. In fact, Kakashi had never actually heard of anyone leaving. To his knowledge, those who left were never trusted to rejoin the ranks of the ANBU even if they wanted to. Thank you for the offer, Rooster-sensei, but my days as an operative are long over. I have no intention of returning. Don't you think you've wasted enough of your talents looking after children? Something flickered in Rooster's eyes. I thought you wanted to serve. You swore to me on that night. Kakashi clenched his fist. That isn't fair. Flashback. The Tanto's smooth, silvery metal glinted under the moonlight. A teenage Kakashi sat on folded knees facing his window, his headband folded and placed beside him. Could he do it, he wondered. He would find out soon enough. He trailed the tip of the short blade down his bare chest. His heartbeat pounded through his ribs, audibly so if he were to believe his inner ear. All it would take would be to plunge the blade and slice from left to right. He would be reunited with Rin and Obito once more. Hatake Tsukumo's son lastly removed his face mask. Obito! Rin, forgive me, coward! Shock stayed the masked teenager's hand as he found Rooster by his window. You! Rooster wordlessly climbed through the window and closed the distance between them with a vicious fist to the youth's face with enough strength to throw him off his feet. Chi! A shinobi committing a seppuku, you Hatake are odd men! Kakashi held his bruised jaw in the rubble that used to be his dress. What are you doing here? He demanded as the older man deftly caught the tanto. If you truly wish to repent for whatever sins you believe you have committed, Hatake Kakashi, then your life is not correct means of payment. Then what is? Kakashi demanded loudly. Service. Rooster answered, his voice resounding calmly and loud in the youth's ears. Devote your entire being to serving the country and village those you wish to repent to gave their lives for. Kakashi watched him extend his hand to him. Join the ANBU, Hatake Kakashi. If you wish to die, then let fate decide whether you die young or old or the way in which you leave this world. From this day onwards, you are no longer Hatake Kakashi. Your name is Dogma 6. End flashback. That night, upon which Hatake Kakashi was driven to attempting to commit suicide by his grief and guilt, he joined the elite shinobi division that answered only to the Hokage at the age of 17, an age at which he has lost his family, his friends, and his mentor. On that night he gained another mentor, Kahaku Shuichi 7, the former teammate of Namikaze Minato and a strange student of Jiraiya. Kakashi would go on to be one of the youngest ANBU operatives in history, and dedicated his adolescence in service of Konoha, taking on mission after mission. For the following 7 years he forgot his name, and assumed the identity of Dogma 6 at first, and eventually Dog, as he became a seasoned operative worthy of an animal name by his 2nd year. As time went past, went he on to lead a squad of his own by the age of 20. At first Kakashi welcomed the opportunity for death on each and every mission. He was green, wet behind the ears, eager to see whether he would live or death, whether he was meant to live or die. Death did not come for him. No, it only took the lives of those around him like it always had. It was as though it was some sick, cosmic joke. That's not fair, Kakashi said again in a quiet voice. I gave my life to ANBU. I gave everything in service. Shuichi shook his head. Not everything, Kakashi. You still have more to give, more to offer to your country and village. Kakashi clenched his fist, walked past the ANBU captain, and began to make his descent. I'm not interested. I'm going to climb this mountain again. I expect you to be gone when I make it back to the top. Shu watched him descend with a neutral expression. Not at all looking particularly regretful he failed to recruit Hatake Kakashi once again. Very well. The tall shinobi fixed his mask. Don't cheat this time, Mount Kunguran. Naruto narrowly darted past the scorpion's stinger and gripped his kodachi in a charging lunge grip and pushed the butt of his bandage-wrapped guard as he sunk the tip of blade into the beast. The arachnid trashed and shook him off forcefully only to find the blonde Chunin to disperse. Another clone? The original Naruto appeared several feet above the scorpion along with several clones and a fully charged Rasengan in his hand. The beast attempted a final stab with his stinger, which Naruto subverted with the help of his clones pulling him out of the way. As his descent on top of it came to an end, he reared back his hand and slammed it into the scorpion's back. Rasengan! The impact of the sphere of chakra flattened its leg and produced enough pressure to form a crater beneath it. I'm not done yet. He held up his unconventional hand seal and created a dozen of Kage Bunshin before jumping off the scorpion's back and retreating to a safe distance. Bunshin Daibakuha! The clones threw themselves onto the arachnid's body as they began to glow bright seconds before erupting in a giant explosion that resulted in the crater deepening and growing wider several feet, and a strong blast of wind that sent Naruto flying several feet. By the time he found his footing, dust and smoke continued to bellow from the crater. That was one tough son of a bitch, the blonde noted as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. As the smoke settled, the scorpion managed one more death rattle before its body completely slackened and gave in. Filthy human! Naruto fell to his backside, immediately regretting it as the heat of the ground burned the palms of his hands uncomfortably but too tired to sit back up. It's not chakra exhaustion, he deducted as he breathed heavily. The humidity here makes it hard to breathe, let alone fight. Forming the tiger seal, he lied down on his back, spouted a Mizurappa in the air, letting the water rain upon him in a refreshing, cool shower on his skin. It was at that exact moment that, suddenly, more creatures began to appear. The giant scorpions bigger than the last tore through the earth surrounding him, stingers poised to take his life. You will regret taking the life of one of our brethren, human! Naruto scrambled to his feet and reached for his sword as his widened eyes flashed around. There was no way out, he was surrounded. You have got to be kidding me. Chapter 20, Bend or Break, Forest of Death. The last thing Sasuke remembered was the look of twisted delight on the purple-haired proctor's face right before she knocked him unconscious with a cheeky "Good luck! And try not to die." When Sasuke came to, his head still ached enough. He wore the same garments he had on in the hospital, a dark blue short-sleeved shirt and loose, gray sweatpants. That bitch. Vowing to exact revenge on Anko, he picked himself off the ground and patted the dirt off his clothes. He had no equipment, no map, no weapons, and no food. His stomach grumbled as he looked around and noted he was in a forest, a familiar one. The forest of death, Sasuke surmised with a glare. Did she really think this would scare me? He would have scoffed if anyone were around. He survived this place before, when he was much weaker and an S-ranked rogue shinobi after him. He could do it again, easily so. Sasuke tried activating his Sharingan, only to realize he couldn't. Something was off. What's happening? He felt a pulsing sensation on his shoulder. Was it his curse seal? Could Kakashi have reinforced the evil sealing method seal during his unconscious convalescence? No, he quickly dismissed the thought. Kakashi wouldn't do something so reckless. The only reasonable explanation was that Anko had done something to him. From the way it felt, she had either meddled with Kakashi's Fujihoin or added another seal of her own creation to completely prevent him from drawing chakra, including his own. That devious bitch! A hissing noise prompted Sasuke's battle instincts to kick in. He dived out of the way just on time as a cloud of snakes soared past him and bounded off the dirt. That's not very nice! A cheerful voice quipped. You! Sasuke glared upwards at a tree. Anko shot him a grin. You took your time coming to. What's the matter? Did you notice you can't use your chakra, pretty boy? What did you do? Sasuke demanded. Tell you what, Anko replied, crossing her arms lazily. If you can track me down in the next 24 hours, I'll take my seal off. If you fail to do that, then the seal goes off when I say it does. Sasuke glared daggers at the Tokubetsu Jonin. She was infuriating without trying, but he refused to play her game. I'm leaving. Feel free to pussy out, broods. If you can make it out here of anyway. Anko shrugged carelessly. Careful now! She chimed right before she disappeared in a whirl of leaves. Bitch! Sasuke swore again. He never was one for swearing, but she brought it out in him, even more than the blonde she reminded him of. I hope he's having a worse time than I am. Mount Kunguran Valley. It had been approximately 3 hours since Naruto had set foot in the perilous valley beneath the mountain upon which the stronghold of the apes was located. It had not yet even been half a day, and yet his life had been in considerable danger twice. Suffice to say, Naruto had plenty on his mind when he dragged himself away from mangled corpses of 4 giant scorpions under the harsh sun. He was worse for wear and exhausted. His eyes were unfocused, his skin was slick with sweat, and his clothes were torn in various places and singed where they weren't. He had yet to make much progress, but he was already so very tired he could barely think. Fighting was much more difficult in the unreasonably hot climate of Kunguran Valley. He was thirsty and lightheaded, and to make matters worse, the volcanic fumes he had inhaled earlier whilst chasing those mischievous little monkeys had left him feeling dizzy and nauseous. He couldn't even focus his chakra properly to use jutsu anymore once the effects kicked in. Still, he had to keep going if he wanted to keep his promise. He had given himself 1 week to reach the mountain summit. 1 year to return to Konoha. 1 year to return to Rei. The thought of her alone was enough to return life to his eyes and motivated him to persevere through the heat. What I wouldn't give for a cold bath now, Mount Kunguran. Hiruzen stroked his beard pensively, eyes glued to the crystal ball depicting the blonde's trek through the valley. Interesting. The Sarutobi clan had commented. What do you think, nephew? He's got plenty of talent, but he's too raw. Sarutobi Kajiro crossed his arms and rubbed his chin in thought. He's not as clueless as he looks, I'll give him that, and from what I can tell he has excellent battle instincts that will serve him well if he gains more experience. I'm surprised he knows element ninjutsu of 4 nature types. You don't see that often these days. Does he know any right-on jutsu? Hiruzen continued to stroke his mane as he answered. I have yet to observe him use any, but if he followed my instructions he should know at least 2, all 5 elements. Very few humans ever bother learning jutsu of the 5 basic nature types. Enma shook his head, though not in disapproval. The Uzumaki clan's innate talent for understanding and developing jutsu is quite fearsome. He will undoubtedly be an extremely dangerous shinobi one day, even fewer master all 5. Kajiro added with a look to his uncle. My old man must have envied you when you were kids, huh? Your father was a man of greater virtue than I, my dear nephew. Hiruzen chided, a soft smile on his face. He was of greater virtue than any shinobi had any business to be. Kanehigakure. Sakura kicked off her sandals as soon when she got home and groaned tiredly as she climbed the stairs to her room. She had just returned from taking her test and was both tired and frustrated. While she was confident she had aced the theoretical part, she knew she had fallen short on the practical side by failing to maintain her chakra reserves long enough. She had no other choice than to take 2 ration pills to replenish her chakra, 1 more than what was granted, at the cost of unspecified credit. No doubt that would affect her score badly. What made it worse was the fact she had spent the entire week leading up to the test perfecting her control to the tiniest fraction to make sure her meager reserves could cope. The Rosette was in a bad mood to say the least, and now all she desired was to take a shower and eat a nice, hot meal and maybe something sweet for dessert to console herself. As she walked into her room she was already pulling down the zip to her dress, turning to her wardrobe and unaware she was not alone. I should say something before this gets awkward. Sakura let out a scream as she covered herself upon finding Naruto sitting on her bed. Naruto! Knowing her first instinct would be to hurt him, the blonde held up his hands as she retreated behind the door and covered her modesty. He hadn't seen much aside from her undergarments, but he doubted the Rosette would care. Hold on, I'm a clone! You're dead is what you are! Sakura shouted as she threw a punch. Hold on! The Naruto clone caught her fist and released it immediately, shaking its hand. Since when did Sakura pack a punch that hard? I've got a message from the real me. Momentarily surprised, Sakura lowered her hands. A message? The clone nodded. The boss went on a training trip. He won't be back for a year, so he wanted you to hear it from him, sorta. A year? Sakura blinked in surprise. Her mind shifted to her most recent conversation with Shikamaru regarding her former teammate. Her anger subsided almost immediately upon remembering what the Nara clan heir had shared with her. Oh, the clone frowned as her expression fell. What's wrong? Nothing, Sakura said quietly as she sat on her chair by her desk. She ran a hand over the smooth mahogany, fondly remembering the days she would do her homework on shinobi history or studying the theories behind ninjutsu and genjutsu. Now all she used this desk for was studying medicine. Sakura. Naruto's lack of affectionate suffix when he said her name was something she had still not gotten fully used to. What's wrong? This isn't about me, Naruto, and there's nothing wrong. Why don't you tell me your message? The Rosette had decided a while back she would heed Shikamaru's words. It wasn't her place to confront Naruto with the truth about his status as a Jinchuriki. She would wait for him to trust her enough with that information. Only then would she breathe a word about it. Well, that was pretty much it. The real me won't be coming back until a year from now. He had to leave on short notice and couldn't really think of a way to tell you guys. The clone explained, its concerned frown persisting still. Green eyes softened. I understand. What do you understand? The clone asked suspiciously, proving it, and the original, was more perceptive than she thought. What's bothering you? The fact you won't tell me why you had to go. Of course, she had a good idea why, which was the reason she decided to change the subject. How about the fact you just tried to peep on me while I was changing, you pervert? I was not! The clone denied immediately. How was I supposed to know you'd stroll in half naked? I mean, who does that anyway? How did you even get in here? Sakura shot back, flushed with embarrassment. Naruto looked at her with a dry expression. Have we not met before? Mount Kunguran Valley. Aha, it's so hot! Naruto bemoaned tiredly. The valley stretched for miles beyond his vision, and he still couldn't see the summit of Mount Kunguran. It was simply too high and obscured by clouds. He briefly considered stripping down another layer, but aside from his sleeveless bodysuit and baggy trousers he didn't have much on, and thus dismissed the thought. I would kill for some shaved ice right about now. He allowed himself a minute to enjoy a drink of water from his flask. He was still too inebriated from inhaling the volcanic fumes mixed with the hallucination-inducing herbs that grew in the valley's soul, and didn't trust himself with manipulating chakra. As he greedily gulped down, he wondered how much stronger he would be by the time he got back. If he was struggling this much to actually begin his training, he really couldn't tell how much better he would at the end. He just hoped it would be enough. We will come for you. He lowered his flask and turned the cap tightly. And I'll be waiting for you sons of bitches. If one thing was for sure, he wouldn't leave this place until he was strong enough to at least give whoever came for him more trouble than it was worth coming after him. Maybe he wouldn't be able to defeat Atachi the next time they met, but he'd be damned if he didn't take him down with him at least. Maintaining a steady pace was less tiring than dragging himself forward, so Naruto pushed on with that in mind. The Jinchuriki had every intention to succeed in making it to the top of the mountain within a week. He never went back on his word. Neither the heat nor the scorpions could stop him. Several hours later, Naruto was still moving forward with single-minded determination. Though his legs felt heavy and his throat dry as a scorching desert, he kept moving. Amigakure. On the highest tower in the center of Amigakure stood a tall man with spiky orange hair, in a black cloak with red clouds, and many piercings adorning his ears, nose, and lips. His most noticeable features were his purple, ripple-patterned eyes that shined with soul-piercing intensity. The man stood lonesome on the tower as his eyes overlooked the great metropolis he had built. Tall, metallic skyscrapers stretched into infinity from the heart of Amigakure. Perpetual rain showered the metropolis, even at night when the city was ablaze with countless lights that illuminated it brilliantly. Aim no Kuni was an oddity amongst most countries, for it had no daimyo, or any form of civilian government. Many years ago it was a wealthy country rich in culture. The people were happy and generous, and lived in humble abodes of stone and wood. The earth bore fruitful soil with each harvest due to its unique climate of tropical rain showers and long periods of sunlight. None went hungry, for there was food to spare. The people of Aim believed the rain was a gift from the gods, who favored them above all others for their charity and humility, and they thanked the gods for their blessings by celebrating them many times a year with many grand festivals and emulating their charity unto others. Unfortunately, their happiness would not last. The nation of Rain was a small country, landlocked with the three of the great five elemental nations, earth, wind, and fire. The nations of river, grass, and stone also shared their borders. Though they had managed to stay out of their neighboring countries' conflicts for many years, wars became an entirely different phenomenon with the inception of the shinobi system. The Warring States period, in which shinobi clans fought for the highest bidder, had grieved them relatively little, as they had always been able to hire shinobi of their own for protection, or mustered enough crops for tributes in exchange for peace. This was no longer an option with the new shinobi system, in which shinobi swore fealty to country and daimyo. No army could stand on even ground with a properly trained shinobi force. Greed, hatred, and fear birthed one conflict after another, one war after another. Before long, not even Aim could remain neutral, for if they paid peace tribute to one country, another would demand the same or declare them enemies otherwise. 6 countries surrounded the small nation of Rain. At times, 6 warring countries. Any tactician worth their salt would have considered Aim the perfect staging area for war. At first, Aim's neighbors promised they were merely establishing trade routes. Then they promised they were merely building storage facilities. Then the promises stopped altogether. Aim had no daimyo or standing army, They were not considered anyone's equal for those reasons and had thus ceased to be a true country in the eyes of their oppressors. It didn't matter how much money they could make and crops they could offer, they could not hire shinobi clans to protect them, for they were now their aggressors. Neutrality was no longer an option. It was bend or break. What was aimed to do but bend if not break? Nothing, it seemed. The Rain Nation was a small country with a population of less than 1 million, of which the majority found home in many of the smaller settlements in the countryside as farmers and craftsmen. They did not know how to fight, so they did not fight, and so their lands were no longer their lands in the truest sense, for it was now paved with roads and strongholds they did not build and guarded by people they could not call their own. What could they do but hold their tongues when foreign daimyo stationed their troops on their lands? What else could they do but watch on as conflicts broke out and armies numbering tens of thousand men marched, killed and bled on Aim's soil? They could pay the ultimate price for their defiance, or simply do nothing, and so they did nothing, for that was all they could do without bending or breaking. They simply did nothing. Death and destruction swallowed Aim no Kuni. The rain continued as it always did, though now it held a different meaning. No longer was the rain a blessing from the gods. The country and its people wept, and so did the gods that could no longer protect them. For a brief time they found renewed hope when a hero was born at the time. A young, fierce and noble man ascended to the forefront as a champion of the people. Hanzo the Salamander, they called him. He was the man who single-handedly united the country and rallied its people and their support. Hanzo was a force to be reckoned with, as strong as even the most elite shinobi of the Great Five and a master tactician. Ultimately Hanzo too lost his way as he became disillusioned with his dream to fight, for the country had named him hero. What was one man to do against the might of many? He was but a man. The salvation of Aim was not a task for a man, it was a task for a god. Only a god could vanquish its enemies, and only a god could protect it. There once was a boy named Yahiko who dreamt of becoming such a god. He died many years ago at the hands of none of that Hanzo the Salamander, who by then was nothing more than a paranoid bygone, a shade of his former self. The true gods were cruel to have Yahiko die by the hands of the man he had once idolized. Yahiko died a young man barely into his prime. He died before he could acquire the salvation of Aim, before he could father Konan's children, before he could become a god. Though tragedy struck, not all was lost. Something was gained. The day Yahiko died was the same day Pain was born. Pain was the true god Yahiko aspired to be. And though he assumed the appearance of Yahiko's closest friend, whose hands were still red with Yahiko's blood, he too was dead. Nagato! A soft voice called out. Pain turned to face Konan. Like her origami, her beauty appeared as though it would never fade. He's here. No need for an introduction, Konan-san. Another voice said. After all, we're all close friends here, aren't we? An orange, spiral-patterned mask glistened with wetness under a black hooded cloak adorned with red clouds. Tobi, Pain said stoically. I see you've returned. I have indeed. Konan looked at both men with hidden apprehension. Let's take this inside. I won't be here for long. You relayed the message? Pain asked. Tobi smiled thinly under his mask. I have indeed, and Atachi won't be a problem, the masked man stated confidently. Nor will Kisame. I have complete confidence their excursion to Konoha was a one-time thing. Very well. Pain caught the look of displeasure from his angel. You're displeased, Konan. They both challenged you directly, the blue-haired angel stated. A mere warning is not enough. Tobi eyed her with juvenile curiosity. I never took you for one to hold a grudge, Konan-san. She ignored him and held Pain's gaze. Make no mistake, Konan, they will both feel my wrath if they cross me again. The god of rain spoke with absolute finality. Whatever the reason, it must have been something of significance for Atachi to defy me. Don't trouble yourself any more than necessary, Tobi insisted lightly. They know what will happen, what must happen, if they defy us again. Pain considered his plan of action. You are certain you have no knowledge as to why they would do such a reckless thing as infiltrate Konoha? I never said I didn't know the reason. Tobi crossed his arms, his one visible eye on Konan's angered expression. What is the meaning of this? Pain demanded in an elevated voice. Speak, Madara. Konan narrowed her eyes. You dare dash. That is fine by me. Tobi agreed easily. Now then, if you will excuse me, I have other business to attend to. God and angel watched the masked man disappear in a swirl of colors that ripped through the fabric of time and space. I hate that man, Konan said. Pain acknowledged her. I know, but he is of use to us for now. Tsunade outskirts. The deserts of Kaze no Kuni stretched farther than the eye could see. It went on and on seemingly perpetually, without an end in sight. At day it was like a sweltering oven, unbearably hot. During the night it was unforgivingly cold. No man could survive the desert alone. It was too big, too treacherous, and a habitat to giant monstrosities such giant scorpions, spiders, and other predators so vicious they made the creatures of the forest of death look like tame pets. No man could survive in these harsh conditions without support of comrades, no man but one. From a young age they called him Sabaka no Gaara. It was fitting in more ways that one. The desert was his realm and he was its god. Both blessed and cursed by the power of the Ichibi no Tanuki known as Shikaku, Gaara possessed the ability to manipulate sand as though extensions of himself. The sand obeyed him and the sand protected him. The sand also isolated him from the rest of the world. Senju Hashirama had been exceptionally generous when he gifted Tsunade with the Ichibi in the hopes of laying foundation to friendship and understanding. Naturally, the shinobi world spat upon such consideration. The official records to this day state rather than gifting the Biju, the Shodai Hokage was made to surrender it to the Shodai Kazakage. Few bothered, or perhaps dared, to question the legitimacy of the official records. Nationalism was key to maintaining a shinobi force, and those who presented themselves as dissidents were often silenced, one way or another. This practice was not exclusive to Suna, of course. In fact, most shinobi forces had military police factions in place to maintain the status quo. Sabaka no Gaara cared little for the details, or at least there was a time he didn't. Though he resented none as much as his own father, the young Jinchuriki harbored an intense hatred for the Shodai since he was youngster. It was part of the reason why he never thought of questioning the invasion of Konoha, despite the long-standing good relationship between both villages. He simply wanted to destroy the home of the man that indirectly destroyed his life. The invasion failed much to everyone's shock. Sand and Sound had meticulously planned their invasion for months, preparing in absolute silence as they set the stage of their dubious plot in shadows. If successful, the invasion would have been unprecedented, and it would have been the greatest victory in Tsunade history, had it not been for Konoha's very own Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto, the only one to have ever defeated Gaara in battle. The entire invasion hinged on the successful unleashing of the Ichibi in the village like some kind of bomb, before the eyes of many foreign representatives and doubters. But when Gaara fell, so did their chances of success. It had been nearly a year since the failed invasion, and a lot had changed since they returned in disgrace. Oto continued to do battle with anyone in their way, usurping villages wherever and whenever they could. They suffered even more severe losses than Suna had, but were neither deterred nor intimidated. Orochimaru continued to laugh in the face of the Great Five with supreme confidence. Suna was not so lucky. Unlike Oto, they did answer to a daimyo, and Konoha knew which door it had knocked on. War had been narrowly avoided due to the daimyo of Kaze no Kuni not only denying involvement, but also by condemning the actions of Suna and promising justice to Hai no Kuni. Who could blame him when he truly had nothing to do with the invasion? There was plenty of cause for embarrassment to go around, and the feudal lord suffered no small part, seeing as his top shinobi had been assassinated and replaced by an impostor who orchestrated the invasion to begin with, under his nose and without his knowing. In fact, there were still many traitors within the village that had been involved, double agents and traitors that either took orders from Orochimaru or had their own agenda. The daimyo's ire had seen to it Suna's military budget was but a shade of its former self. Morale was dangerously low and fewer missions were coming through every day. Kaze no Kuni was beginning to even outsource missions to smaller hidden villages. In their defense, who would want to hire the services of a shinobi village that had been duped so easily? Who would trust them with their secrets, to protect or take lives with discretion when they couldn't keep their own house in order? Suna was on the verge of collapsing. In the past few months, not only was their worthiness of being considered one of the Great Five had been called into question, dissidents began to pop up and became more vocal. There were even rumors that a civil war was on the horizon. A rebellious faction within the hidden sand was gaining traction more and more each day. Disgruntled shinobi that felt betrayed by their daimyo and the commanding officers of the shinobi force. The Yondaime Kazakage had been the first shinobi in many years to inspire as much confidence and faith. 2 of the 3 previous Kazakage had been assassinated, but when the Yondaime proved himself capable of even defeating a Biju, Suna once again had renewed hope. That hope was crushed when the death of the Yondaime was made public. With morale at an all-time low and traitors in their midst, the Sunanin were becoming more and more apprehensive, anxious and rebellious. If balance were to be restored, the traitors would have to be dealt with, and it was for that reason the Ichibi Jinchuriki was all the way out here, in a secluded oasis roughly 2 miles out in the outskirts of Tsunade, where he was isolated from the rest of the village as he waited. Gaara's teal eyes were fixed on the plot of graves. Few people knew of the gravesite. It was a solemn place, a shrine to the late Kazakage's wife. Gaara had been there only twice before, both times with his father and siblings, when he was a young child. He cursed Baki as he read his father's name and almost smiled whimsically. What would his father think of their current situation? Would he blame his son like everyone else in the village did? Gaara didn't have to be more involved with people to know that they blamed him, cursed him for failing to commence the invasion properly. If he cared enough, he might wonder what they were doing about the Shinobi Council. Orochimaru couldn't have gotten Suna involved without at least some backing in it. In all likelihood, his father had unknowingly been in the company of traitors that had aligned with the serpent. There was no other reasonable explanation why his father, the only man known to be able to completely dominate and suppress the Ichibi through complete mastery of magnet release, would have fallen so easily in an ambush. Gaara's eyes shifted to the grave next to his father belonging to his mother Kurura. Your mother didn't love you, Gaara. She cursed your existence and that of the village. Yashimaru's words still stung all these years later. The Ichibi Jinchuriki's eyes shifted to the set of 3 other graves beneath those of his parents. He didn't read the names on the tiny headstones. He wouldn't give them that. From left to right, 1 month and 3 weeks, a boy with the same teal eyes as his own. 2 months and 3 days, a girl with their father's dark eyes. 3 months to the day, another boy, born with dark eyes and a tuft of light brown hair. Gaara had seen the pictures and read the files. His father still smiled during those pregnancies, they both did. They both held hope they lost when he was conceived. He'd seen only one picture of his parents when his mother was pregnant with him. There was no joy in their eyes or smiles on their faces, only blank expressions as though they had already given up on him, as if they wouldn't have fought for him to survive. Sometimes, in his most private moments, Gaara wondered if there was perhaps a fraction of happiness in his parents when he was born. Had his mother rejoiced in his birth at all, even if only a little, or had she truly cursed him and the village for squeezing the last drops of life out of her? Pale fists tightened. Gaara felt a presence through the sand. He had been expecting company, though not of a friendly kind. Gaara? A familiar voice said with bewilderment. Temari had grown even more beautiful since the Chunin exams. The red-headed Jinchuriki cast her a brief look over his shoulder. You shouldn't be here. Temari frowned, somewhat confused, not only because of the fact Gaara was here of all places, but also because he was telling her to make herself scarce. I'll leave you to it after I pay my respects. They were my family too, you know. She had grown bolder of the past few months as well. She had come prepared with flowers for both their parents and their unborn siblings. What are you doing here anyway? You hate this place. At first he said nothing, but when it became apparent she had no intention of leaving on his command, he relented. I'm expecting company. Temari's eyes widened for a moment and then narrowed. The meaning of his words weren't missed on her. He briefly entertained the thought she would slap him. Here? She whispered incredulously. Here. Why would you lead them here? Gaara declined to answer. Baki hadn't specifically instructed to come to this place. He didn't know why he did either. He had just felt like it. I won't protect you if you stay, Temari snorted derisively, something she would have never done mere months ago. Don't underestimate your big sister. I can take care of myself. Brother and sister remained standing in silence in front of their parents' grave. Temari laid flowers down by the graves of their unborn siblings. The sentiment irritated Gaara, but he gave it no voice. Temari shifted. Gaara, they're here, he acknowledged. Of course he knew, no one could hide from him in the desert, for he was a god amongst the dunes. Konoha. Tsunade pored over the report in front of her, a frown in her brows as she did the math in her head. She hadn't had much time to read clan reports since becoming Hokage due to the state the village was in after the invasion, and not being one to press political issues unless absolutely necessary. She had been content putting the reports on the back burner. If it hadn't been for Shizun reminding her the other day, she would have likely forgotten all about them. Clan reports were similar to reports submitted by division heads, written and submitted by clan heads to include the status of their clan members, how many were on active duty, and so on. They were often long, tedious, and rather passive-aggressively laden with criticisms on a great many things. Tsunade just so happened to be reading one such a comment in the Hyuga clan's report. Lord Hayashi was of the opinion that the home garrison was doing a rather terrible job of keeping its shinobi in line and had numerous suggestions on how to better discipline shinobi on leave acting out. To be fair, Tsunade had gotten several similar complaints, and to make matters worse, she had gotten disturbing news the day before a jonin by the name of Fukuda Shinya had gone missing. The Godame had her ANBU commander personally investigate the disappearance of Fukuda. She didn't know what to make of the disappearance but knew she couldn't afford to lose any more credibility. What would it say about the Hokage if one of her men was missing and she knew nothing about it? Of course, she wasn't just worried for her reputation. She was worried for the missing Jonin, as it was her job to be. As Hokage, she was responsible for the shinobi force. It was her obligations to ensure that her men were ready and able to serve country and village. That also meant it was her business to account for all shinobi. It was particularly worrying that Fukuda hadn't been seen at his station for several days before his absence was reported. From what she understood, he had been connected to several spies in the invasion, though Baki personally cleared him several weeks after. Heh. Tsunade laid the report down and rubbed her chin. An idea had just struck her, though before she could consider it the door to her office opened and Jiraiya strolled in at a leisurely pace. Haim, Sunagakure outskirts. They touched down on the sand, light as feathers, silent and observant. There were at least 3 dozen of them. They wore matching uniforms of black shinobi attire including face mask and carried wickedly curved scimitars and chains. They bore no insignia nor did they speak, but Gaara knew who they were. They were of a clan of assassins that hailed from one of many remote islands near Kaminari no Kuni, a hidden village true to its name, unreachable to outsiders. Gaara knew his enemies were willing to pay top Rio to have him eliminated. This particular clan of assassins were far from cheap. They were perfectionists, highly disciplined in teamwork and with a 100% success rate. They weren't particularly powerful as individuals, but they were considered unbeatable when working as a unit, something they were trained to do from birth. Baki had told him they would show up when he was most vulnerable. His eyes shifted to Temari. Bastards, Konoha, you're leaving? Jiraiya stood leaning against the wall by the door. That's right, Haim, I could use you, Tsunade said with a light frown. She sat seated behind her desk. I'm sure you could. The sage replied playfully. You know what I mean. The Godane glared at him for a moment, but then relented and released a sigh and reclined further into her chair. Where are you going? Do you remember that summit I told you about? Jiraiya asked. Tsunade recalled the hermit having informed her of such in a letter and in person weeks ago. Sojin and a whole lot of other dubious people, Jiraiya said with all seriousness. Orochimaru might be there. He'd sooner send a representative, whether they know it or not, she added before he could correct her. Orochimaru never liked crowds. He never liked much of anything. I'd offer you backup, but I know you'd refuse. I would, Jiraiya admitted. Tsunade frowned. You worried about me? I'm touched. The slug princess ignored the immature remark. When will you be back? 3 months maybe? I don't know, he admitted with a shrug. I have other things to take care of, informants I need to speak to, and debts I've got to pay. You know, boring stuff. You're telling me. Tsunade replied with a gesture to the mountain of paperwork to her right. I should have never let that kid fool me into taking this job. You didn't stand a chance, did you, against him? Tsunade gave a wry smile. I suppose not. The Sannin shared one last look. Jiraiya considered kissing her before he left but decided against it, and instead peeled his privacy sealing tag from behind him. I'll be seeing you, Tsundahime. Be safe, Jiraiya. The toad sage flashed her a grin. I will. Sunagakure outskirts. The assassins were quick and light. To attack them was like trying to strike a leaf in the wind. They were so nimble and precise there was no wasted movement as they maneuvered silently, working in perfect synchronization as they changed formations and dodged waves of sand and blasts of wind. Gaara cut the wind with his hands and he tried to corner them. If he could dictate their mobility, he would enjoy a relatively easy victory. They were in the desert after all. Unfortunately, it wasn't going to be that easy as his enemies read him like an open book. It was as if they knew what he was going to do before he even did. They must have observed him and meticulously planned in advance. In an attempt to catch them off guard, the Jinchuriki raised his arms as the sand from his gourd protected his from multidirectional jets of water and bolts of lightning whilst he raised the desert beneath their feet, forcing them airborne. Rendan Suna Shigure! His successive shots of sand drizzle managed to only catch 3 out 36. They were so skilled in teamwork they pulled each other of harm's way, thus suffering as few casualties as possible. A projectile glinted in the sunlight. Kamaitachi! Temari put up a good fight of her own, swinging her fan and creating a whirlwind of cutting gales. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheek where a kunai had flashed past her, a fresh addition to the numerous cuts and scratches she had already gotten despite Gaara's best efforts to protect her. Her aim was true enough to catch the offending shinobi in her and wind technique, cutting him to ribbons. He was dead in seconds. It wouldn't be enough though, Gaara knew. If they both wanted to survive this battle, he had to be able to go all out, but with Temari so close that wasn't an option. There was a reasonable chance his sister could get hurt in his larger-scale jutsu. That wasn't a risk he was willing to take so long as she was in the fight. She'd surely be angry with him, but Gaara decided to take his sister out of the fight. Sand began to pour from the gourd on his back and pooled to the ground where it continued to grow in mass. Sister. Temari's eyes shifted around rapidly as she calculated distances and strategies as expected from an excellent long-range combatant. She hadn't heard him, or if she did, she pretended not to. Temari. Gaara rarely called her by name. The demon of the sand raised his hand towards her and clutched his fist. In an instant a thick cocoon encased his sister. Temari's outrage was faintly audible and they didn't particularly bode well for him, but she'd be out of harm's this way, Gaara rationalized as he lowered the cocoon in the oasis. Mount Kunguran Valley. Naruto had a new appreciation for the sheer size of the valley. It was much, much bigger than he had imagined. How didn't I see it? He asked himself as he made his way through the jungle. That's right. Jungle. How he hadn't seen the lush, tropical forestry from Suzaru's back when he flew in, he still didn't quite know, but he was partially relieved nonetheless. It sure as hell beat the volcanic plains he had suffered through. After hours of trudging through the red waste under the scorching sun, Naruto had stumbled into a jungle. A very large jungle. Dazed, thirsty, and barely conscious, and still a little inebriated, his mind hadn't even properly registered the tropical forestry until he heard the sound of running water. Fresh running water. He nearly lost his mind when he stumbled upon the stream. He was too tired and too thirsty to even consider popping a contamination pill to check whether the water was drinkable, and dipped his head in the water and drank to his heart's content. Minutes later, his stomach filled with water, Naruto slumped to the ground and lay on his back. His lips were still crusty from dehydration, but he felt considerably better and confident enough he could muster enough chakra control. Now his mind was clear, and thus held up his go-to-hand seal. He paused for a moment, however. Would using the Kage Bunshin to collect food and materials for shelter be cheating? He supposed not. The old man hadn't expressly told him not to, but he couldn't help but shake the feeling in the pit of his stomach that he ought to do it by himself. Maybe I'm overthinking it, Naruto thought as he blinked through irritation of sweat in his eyes. I didn't have this feeling when I fought those scorpions. Then again, my life was on the line then, and now I'm being lazy. The blonde released an exasperated sigh. Really, you're arguing with yourself now, Uzumaki? Deciding to think on it for a few minutes, Naruto closed his eyes, using his backpack as a cushion. 5 minutes of rest, and he'd know what to do. Naruto fell into a deep slumber the moment his eyes shut. Tsunade outskirts. Volumes of blood seeped through the sand surrounding the oasis hidden by the dunes. Dark splotches, some mixed with viscera, enough to make even a seasoned shinobi's stomach churn. Gaara's arms moved continuously and vigorously as he manipulated the sand with fluid precision, like a master conductor directing a sublime ballet of death and destruction. His enemies attempted to slow him down with water jutsu. They had come prepared with efficient formations to overwhelm him in turn, moving in groups of half a dozen men. Were it anywhere else, they would have likely won, perhaps even if the red demon of sand tapped into the Ichibi's power. High-pressure water jets with considerably cutting power battered his defenses from all sides as Gaara continued to uphold his efforts. Half a dozen eyes floated above. Gaara bided his time. They hadn't noticed yet. His non-Shikaku eye glanced to the oasis. Temari's laid at the bottom, protected in an airtight cocoon to keep her from getting in the way and, if he had to be completely honest, for own safety. The sentiment would be for naught, however, if he didn't act quickly before her air supply ran out. Gaara took a deep breath and whirled his arms in a circling motion, encasing himself a thick cocoon of compressed sand. The Jinchuriki pressed his middle finger to his right eye. Like always, for a brief second, a part of him marveled at the irony of him using this technique, one he had copied from his father. Dice and no me. He could only use one eye at a time with his third eye technique and only in his base form, and thus repressed his initial Jinchuriki mode so he could quickly, and carefully, calibrate his enemies' positions, switching from eye to eye like a one-screen camera feed. 36 men had been sent after him. 10 he had already killed, including Temari's victim, and 26 remained. They continued to attack in 4 groups of 6 with water, lightning and fire jutsu, the 3 elements that stood the best chance to weaken his ultimate shield. Now, Gaara pulled enough of Shikaku's chakra to strengthen his jutsu, as he released his dice and no-mi jutsu. He had yet to try out this particular technique in combat, but now was as good a time as any. Shikaku's ultimate defense spoke for itself. Gaara wanted to see what its ultimate offense was capable of. Gaara knelt and placed both palms on the sand beneath his feet and concentrated. The blood of his fallen would-be assassins began to gather in a pool beneath him and stretched up with him, mixing with the sand as it formed into a spear with 4 wickedly curved blades. His chakra strengthened the iron in the blood with the compressed sand into an incredibly durable weapon, the Spear of Shikaku. The sand dome dissolved and Gaara stood tall, his eyes replaced by those of the Ichibi. Tsunade outskirt. Kankuro was beside himself with worry. Perspiration ran down the side of his face. He rubbed his prickling eye with his sleeve, unknowingly ruining his kabuki-styled face paint. The puppeteer led the charge at the head of a 30-strong search party. "Keep up!" The newly minted Jonin barked. That damnable fool Baki had tried to keep it from him that Gaara was in danger. He had known of the snakes in the sand. Of course he did. He was no fool after all. But how was he to know they would be bold enough to strike now, and in the desert no less? Naturally, Gaara could take care of himself. Kankuro had no doubt of that. But Temari. All color had drained from Baki's face when he mentioned Temari went to pay her respects. "Kankuro-sama!" One of the Chunin and his hosts closed in. His name was Kaizawa Masaki. He was their sensor shinobi, an invaluable asset in the desert. "I'm sensing a colossal spike of chakra in the direction we're heading." Kankuro's eyes darkened. "Gaara, I thought so too." The sensor agreed. "Kankuro-sama, it's still rising. Perhaps we should wait for reinforcements in case the Ichibi escapes." "Absolutely not. My sister is with him, and Gaara can't control himself when he uses the Ichibi's power." His legs picked up even more. His breathing became harder soon enough. Puppeteers didn't have the greatest of stamina to begin with as stationary long-range combatants, and Kankuro was carrying a puppet on his back. "Let's go!" They ran in tense silence for some time, undoubtedly anxious and apprehensive. There was a good chance Gaara could lose control if the assassins pushed him far enough. Kankuro was considerably more worried for his sister, however, and pushed himself to run even faster to the point he had a considerable lead on his men. He suspected they weren't giving it their all, not that he could blame them. Gaara was his brother, he was somewhat used to it, but his men didn't know anything about him. They probably believed all the rumors, even the inane ones like the one that suggested Gaara was the one who slew the late Kazakage. Kankuro's mind drifted to the time shortly after their return in disgrace. It was the first and only time his younger brother had ever confided in him. "Gaara, Baki has been looking for you all over. We should dash." "Brother, why do you think I lost against Uzumaki Naruto?" I don't know. Maybe he got lucky." Gaara had shook his head. "What do bonds really mean, Gaara? Until now my bonds with others have only been ones of hatred and murder, but now, after he beat me, I've been thinking. Perhaps I can change. Perhaps I can be more like him." "We're here," Kaizawa reported. Kankuro's eyes widened in shock as they came upon the site of battle. His legs kept moving, unaware his search party had stopped. Their eyes were even wider his, and filled with fear. There was so much blood. Gaara stood in the middle of a revamped dune formation, his arms crossed and a spear of blood and sand levitating behind him. Around him several dozen spears protruded from the sand. Roughly 24 men remained suspended, their bodies perforated as blood continued to drip from their carcasses. Kankuro blinked hard as he finally willed his legs to stop. For a moment he thought Gaara's hair had grown longer, only to notice his younger brother was drenched in blood, likely from the assassin mounted on the spear floating above him. "Jie! Gaara, Kankuro!" Gaara's voice sounded hollow to him, almost alien. Shikaku's eyes pierced his soul. Kankuro involuntarily took a step backwards. "Where's Temari?" he asked when managed to find his voice. "What happened to her?" Gaara grimaced. He fell to his knees and clutched his head. Gaara! Kankuro hesitated. Could he touch his brother safely, or would the Shikaku intervene? Deciding not to risk it, he instead asked, "Are you okay?" Gaara didn't answer him, and instead raised his arm and made a gripping motion towards the oasis. Kankuro turned his head, eyes widening once more as a cocoon of sand emerged from the water and dissolved, unceremoniously dropping Temari's limp form to the ground in a free fall. "Catch her!" The puppeteer barked loudly. Before anyone could intervene, Gaara commanded the desert sand to shoot up and secure their sister. For a moment Kankuro couldn't believe his eyes. Did Gaara just overexert himself to save Temari? Gaara breathed heavily, finding his feet and folding his arms, fatigue clear in his eyes. He fought the Ichibi for control, Kankuro realized. I didn't know he could fight it. But why? He turned and ran over to his sister. "Medic!" As he barked commands, the realization hit him. Gaara had fought the Ichibi not for himself, but to protect Temari. Gaara dash. As Kankuro looked at his brother, he saw something, a glimpse, a shadow. Gaara, behind you! One of the assassins had survived and hidden from sight under the sand. Stop him! He barked the order, as he unleashed Karasu. In the heat of the moment, it didn't dawn on Kankuro that his sensors should have noticed, should have sensed the assassin. Why were they all so quiet? Before Karasu could get within range of its target, the nameless shinobi was upon his brother, sword steadied for a killing blow. The sand erupted and encroached the assassins, but not before his blade struck and tore a gash in Gaara's face. A sliver blood flowed through the wind. Gaara! Enraged, Gaara roared and gripped his fist tightly. His killing intent spiked to levels of the days prior to his defeat. Gaara wanted blood, and he got it copious amounts. Sabaka Soso! Kankuro had witnessed Gaara's sand waterfall prison many times before. He had seen Gaara kill countless times, out of duty, out of a desire for pleasure. He had even seen Gaara kill out of sheer boredom. Kankuro had never seen Gaara kill for revenge. He didn't know how much more terrifying it was. Gaara's sand didn't cover the assassin's face. His face mask had been torn aside, and bore his agonizing expression for the world to see. The fear in his eyes stood out even from a distance. It was as if he was looking at the devil himself. In that moment, Kankuro thought he did too. Blood and viscera exploded in a rain of stomach-churning gore, splattering on the sand audibly. Kankuro released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding inside in relief for a moment. Then, turning to shout at his subordinates, it hit him. Too little too late. Kaizawa dash. The censor Kaizawa held a subdued Temari the ground, on her knees, which were turning red due to the hot sand. Temari was barely conscious. Her fan was in the custody of another shinobi. Kaizawa pressed his kunai against her neck. This is our chance. We can get rid of all three of you eyesores right here and now. Kankuro's blood ran cold. Release her, Kaizawa. No, that's not going to happen, Kaizawa said, somewhat nervous, but smiling nonetheless. You three are just like the Yondaime. His blood runs through your veins, that stubborn, cursed blood that got him killed. His weakness is the reason why we failed to destroy Konoha. The world is laughing at us because of his stupidity. What are you talking about? The puppeteer shouted. Let my sister go. Don't worry, she's not going anywhere, Kaizawa said coldly. None of you are. The censor sneered as he caressed Temari's cheek. Your father, the fool, refused to align with Orochimaru, and look what happened to him. He got himself killed, and now we're a laughingstock in the shinobi world. All the sacrifices we made were for nothing. He failed us. He was the one who turned his back on us. Suna has always had to prove itself. It's common knowledge we're the weakest amongst the Great Five. Suna commands no respect. The lowest in might, manpower, income, the weakest biju. Tell me. Kaizawa geared his ire to Gaara. How did you lose to a Jinchuriki who isn't even fully realized? You are just as responsible for the failed invasion. Tell me exactly how could you have lost to such a weak host? Kankuro wished his eyes could kill in that moment as he glared at Kaizawa with nothing but unadulterated hatred. He had no idea their failure could have done so much damage, but more than that, he couldn't forgive anyone for blaming them, for blaming his brother, when they had done the best they could. But before he could speak, Gaara did, in a voice so calm and composite could hardly believe it. He fought for a greater purpose, Gaara said as he locked eyes with Kaizawa. I lost because he... A ghost of a smile graced Gaara, much to their collective shock, including his brother. Uzumaki Naruto fought for a greater purpose than I. That is the reason I lost. Kaizawa's expression was one of disbelief and madness. What are you saying? He screamed. Are you saying we lost because you couldn't find your resolve? Is that it? I was resolved to kill Uzumaki Naruto. I've never wanted to kill anyone so badly in my life, not even my own father who condemned me to this existence. Grains of sand trickled in Kaizawa's shade as Gaara spoke up, loud enough so they could all hear them. It was not for a lack of resolve that I lost. It was for a lack of purpose. I fought only to prove my existence. I killed so I could feel alive, to confirm that I existed, that I mattered. No one had ever heard Gaara speak at such length because he never had, because no one was ever brave enough to listen. They feared Gaara because his violence knew no limits. They feared him because was unbeatable. Now that Gaara had tasted bitter defeat, they no longer feared him as much, for he was not the invincible demon they believed him to be, not anymore. More importantly, he seemingly cared enough for his siblings that they could have him at their mercy with one of them as their hostage. They weren't afraid because, much to their own disbelief, they had found that Gaara had a heart. So they listened. I understand your anger, Gaara continued in the same loud voice. Until recently, it was one of the few emotions that I understood. My father was the first in many generations that could demand the world's respect, and you idolized him for it. He brought you hope for a future, hope that your families might not be harmed under his protection, hope that the world might not look down upon us. My father disappointed you when he died. He failed to live up to his potential. He failed to be the hero that you needed him to be, and rather than blaming yourselves for your own failures, you are blaming a dead man. What do you know about any of this? You know nothing! You live only to kill and destroy. You were born for that purpose! Kaizawa screamed. What do you know about the losses we have suffered? This village has suffered for generations at the hands of every aggressor that thought they could take what's ours. Your father's stubbornness made us fail, and because of him many good men died in vain. Kaizawa's grip tightened around Temari's throat as he pressed the kunai hard and drew a line of blood. Gaara understood. Kaizawa needed someone to punish. He wasn't interested in reason or logic. He simply needed vindication, in any way he could get it, and wasn't alone. The sins of the father. That's right! Kaizawa said hysterically. Tears were flowing now. It was as if the Tsunade was finally able to unleash the pent-up anger and frustration within him by focusing it all on Gaara. His shinobi training was forgotten now. Cowards! Kankuro shouted at the top of his lungs. Weaklings! You are every bit as much responsible for dash. Floating grains of sand caught Kankuro's attention. Before they could follow his sight, Gaara spread his arms. My brother and sister are weak, far too weak to ever have had any control over the situation. If you want your vengeance, then come and take it. My sand won't stop you. Kill me and be done with it, but you will not harm them. Kaizawa cackled with laughter, unaware he was the only one. Everyone else was too shocked to say anything, too stunned with disbelief at what Gaara was proposing. You really expect me to believe you? The deranged Chunin unsheathed the blade of a nearby subordinate and threw it to Kankuro. The blade lodged into the sand and remained standing. You are out of fucking mind if you think I'm going to play your game, Kankuro said. You'll do it or I'll slit your sister's throat. Kaizawa's hand caressed Temari again. He kept his eyes on both brothers, taking perverse pleasure in provoking them, and even going as far as sliding a hand down slowly until he had sealed his fate. Kaizawa was a dead man, Kankuro decided in that moment. He grabbed the blade by the hilt and began a murderous stalk towards the traitor. Kankuro! Gaara's voice thundered. Do as he says. Do I have your word you will release my sister once you have your pound of flesh? You're actually serious about this? Kaizawa laughed hysterically. It was completely lost on him how the air had changed, how his men had begun to think differently. Sure, as you wish. Kill him, puppet boy, before I shame your sister even more. To make a point, Kaizawa squeezed. Fire burned in Kankuro's stomach as he turned and raised the sword. If you're going to do something, you better do it now, Gaara. While their eyes are on us. Kankuro gave an angry roar as he charged at his brother. The blade swung down just as sand erupted, blasting the men skywards and encasing them in levitating sand coffins. Kankuro halted his momentum and turned, immediately running towards Temari as she slumped forward. He managed to catch her, and embraced her tightly. What took you so long? Temari said weakly. She had been conscious the entire time, though too weakened by oxygen deprivation to be of much assistance, and thus had feigned being unconscious, even through Kaizawa's. Kankuro released her sister and rose, sword in hand, with a murderous look in his eye for the blob of sand from which Kaiza's head protruded. Gaara, he's mine! No, you're right, he's mine! Temari insisted. Kankuro gave her a resentful look, though he couldn't blame her. The traitor's censor had wronged them both. No, they looked to Gaara simultaneously with matching look of disbelief and opened their mouths to argue, but he wouldn't have any of it. No one dies. Gaara, what do you mean? Temari had a hard time containing her own shock and disbelief while feigning being unconscious, but she was certain those words would have gotten her to blow her cover. You're going to. The word didn't simply feel right, it felt foreign even, especially in association with her younger brother. Spare them, whatever I may think of him. Father was a hero to them. His failure is our failure, and despite what we may tell ourselves, we failed them too, he explained calmly. Though if I must be honest, I am glad that we did. Kankuro understood. Uzumaki Naruto. Temari hadn't been there when Gaara confided in him. She hadn't realized how much Gaara had changed. Kankuro placed a hand on his sister's shoulder. His hatred for Kaizawa was still there, but he understood what was more important. Gaara had changed. To make press him into taking another life simply wouldn't be right. It's his life they were after, it's his call. Under normal circumstances, Temari wouldn't have let it go. She would have pressed the issue until she got a satisfactory result, but she was not oblivious. Fine, you really think we're going to believe you? Kaizawa crooned provocatively. You're not fooling anyone, demon. Gaara looked straight at him. What, you don't like that word, demon? Kaizawa sneered. Just shut up, Kaizawa. Another Suna shinobi said quietly. Just accept your fate like a man. It's over. You think he'll spare you for those words, fool? He has to kill us. It's what he does. It's a compulsion, isn't it? Kaizawa looked Gaara in the eyes. His expression faltered. What's with that look? Don't you look at me as if you can pity me, demon. I remember you now, Gaara said. You had a brother. Kaizawa, your brother was in my father's guard. Temari looked at the suspended jonin. She could clearly see his face now. Kaizawa Daisuke, Kankuro supplied. I remember how proudly you said his name when you told me he had died with our father, protecting him, loyal to the bitter end. It's why it comes as such a shock you would do something like this, Masaki. You have a lot of nerve addressing me so familiarly, scum! Your father dash. Enough. Gaara lowered the sand coffins and crossed his arms again. It took considerably more control to keep 30 men bound securely, especially when they were levitated. You keep blaming our father as though he is the cause for all the misery in your life. Why don't you take some responsibility for your own failures instead of hiding behind excuses and scapegoats because you don't want to acknowledge your own shortcomings? Coward, just kill me and be done it with, demon. Kaizawa Masaki fell silent and resigned to his fate. Gaara contemplated his next decision. He was certain that, despite what they had done, he didn't want to kill them. He didn't want more blood on his hand if he could help it, least of all blood from fellow Suna shinobi. Mere weeks ago he would have killed them without second thought. Months before that it wouldn't even have come to this. He might even have allowed Temari to die. But now, things were different. He was different. I don't want to be that person again, Gaara realized. I don't want to be alone again. The pain of being alone, it's out of this world, isn't it? I don't know why, but I understand your feelings so much, it actually hurts. But I have people that are important to me now. I won't let you hurt them. Too, those words had haunted him ever since Uzumaki Naruto had spoken them. As bitter as defeat was, they gave him hope that he might believe in them, that he might change because of them. And now he had changed. Gaara closed his eyes. No one dies. The sand coffins began to dissolve. The captives were free before either Temari or Kankuro could complain. Not that they would. What is the meaning of this? Kaizawa demanded in a voice so filled with disbelief it was a genuine. Why won't you kill us? Is this some trick? Some of the released rebels began to murmur amongst themselves, though the majority fell in a shock-induced silence. In my defeat, I found hope. Gaara silenced them all with those words. All my life I believed I was fated to become the incarnation of evil, and that death and destruction were all I was good for. I didn't believe in things such as friendship and family because I didn't think I was worthy of being considered human, of being able to have and appreciate those things. It wasn't until I met Uzumaki Naruto, a Jinchuriki like me, someone who understood me and felt my pain simply by looking at me. It wasn't until then that I realized that I could be something else, something more than what I am now. He didn't know if any of this was breaking through to them. He didn't know whether they would believe him, or whether they were truly listening in the first place, or even whether they'd stop trying to kill him. But as Gaara told them everything that had been on his mind since his defeat, as he bared his soul to them, he felt an immense weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in his life, Gaara felt as though he was human, as though he was changing, really changing. He couldn't stop himself even if he wanted to. In defeat I learned what is truly important. I learned that fighting for myself would never bring me peace, and that my resolve would always fail against someone who fought not his own sake but for those who were important to him. Gaara did something unusual. He smiled. It wasn't one of his usual wicked, murderous grins he had when he was under the influence of Shikaku. It was a genuine smile. I didn't realize it until now that I've had people important to me around me all along. My brother and sister are important to me. I want to protect them, and I'll fight for their sake to protect them. From the corner of his eye Kankuro could see tears welling up in his sister's eyes. He hadn't seen Temari cry since they were little. She hadn't even cried when they heard about their father's death. He couldn't fault her though. His own emotions were threatening to get the better of them. If you'll let me, I'll fight for your sake too, Gaara said finally, in a voice so strikingly genuine he couldn't hide it if he wanted and they couldn't ignore it. Uzumaki Naruto fights for his village. It made him strong, stronger than I ever could be. But more importantly, it gave him something much more valuable. It gave him peace. I want to do the same. I want to be like him. So I won't kill you. I won't hurt you. Instead, Gaara didn't know if he had the courage to say the words to commit to his change. But somehow he found it deep in the pit of his stomach. I'll become Kazakage and protect you with my life. The tears were flowing freely by now, and Temari wasn't the only one. Amongst the men Gaara had spared, many fell to their knees and cried for forgiveness, whilst others remained in a state of shock or had their guilt eat at them. Even Kaizawa Masaki was without words as he cried, his head pressed to sand and fists clenched tightly. Kankuro wiped his eyes with his sleeve, pulling Temari in one-armed embrace as the men clung on to Gaara's robes, crying for forgiveness. For the first time ever, the sand did not intervene. There was no threat left to be exterminated, no enemy to defend its host from. He's going to do it, Temari said, wiping away the tears. He's changed, Kankuro. I know, sis, Kankuro replied, a grin plastered on his face. I never thought it possible, a familiar voice said. The two turned as Baki approached them. Several feet behind him, a host of 50 or so shinobi remained standing. The seasoned jonin had a look of pride in his eye as he watched Gaara separate himself from the mass and kneel by Masaki. I didn't think this day would ever come. None of us did, Temari said chokingly. She was beside herself with happiness. She felt she had just witnessed a miracle. Perhaps she did. They're all in love with him now. They believe in him, she said as more shinobi began to circle around Gaara. They were chanting his name. A smile found itself on Baki's usually stern face. I heard everything. It appears Gaara has inherited whatever power Uzumaki did. Kankuro gave a confused frown. What do you mean? Whatever power Uzumaki had over Gaara that allowed him to change him, it looks like he's passed it on. That unique charisma that inspires trust in others. Baki expanded vaguely. I've never seen anything like it. Brother and sister could only nod in understanding. What Baki was saying, as strange as it was, they knew there was some truth to it. They had seen their brother change before them, and they had witnessed the power of that change. They knew then and there that they were looking at the next Kazakage. Mount Kunguran Valley. The jungle was breathtakingly beautiful at night. A touch of cool breeze clung to the night air soothingly, and the night sky was a beautiful mix of black, blue and indigo, adorned with countless stars shining so brightly Naruto couldn't think of anything any more beautiful. This place is all right, he mused, lied down in the tall grass. When things aren't killing me, I mean. He chuckled a little. I'm talking to myself already. To be perfectly honest, he wasn't feeling lonely in the slightest. If anything, he felt more at peace now than he had in Konoha, lying in jungle grass with the most beautiful view he'd ever had. Nice breeze on his skin and the sound of babbling brooks and unseen critters shifting through darkness. So this is what's like to actually decompress, huh? It's nice. Naruto never decompressed much before. He was usually too busy for that, or fighting for his life or someone else's. His days off were usually spent fooling around or in the company of the others. For the first time in a long time was completely alone with his thoughts. It was surprisingly relaxing. Naruto pulled his pendant from under his bodysuit and admired it properly. The Shodai Hokage had worn this thing, probably even in battle. Words couldn't describe how cool that was. Just the thought made his lips twitch in a smile. Now that he thought about it, he had an unusual connection to the Hokage. His father was the Yondaime. The Sandaime raised him, and he was related by blood to the Shodai, Nidaime, and Godaime through his mother's side. Tsurugaku's suspicion of him made more sense now than it had before. It was almost like a higher power was at work. Surely his connection to the past Hokage couldn't be a mere coincidence? Head resting one arm and another stretched as though grasping at the curtain of darkness that was the sky, Naruto let his mind wander from the Hokage to his mother. The Uzumaki clan was something else if his mother was able to protect him shortly after surviving a Biju extraction and childbirth, two ordeals of which was certain to kill the average Jinchuriki, if such a thing even existed, and another potentially lethal for any woman, but even more so for a Jinchuriki who'd have to go through the pain of labor whilst warding off a Biju. That impressed him even more than his father's legacy, and it meant more to him than anything ever could because of the simple fact she did it for him. The fact he lived was undeniable proof that he was loved when he was brought into the world. That was something most children took for granted. In their minds their parents were supposed to love them, that was their job. But for a lonely orphan who knew nothing about his parentage or background, it was normal to assume the worst. That they weren't loved or wanted but instead perceived as something negative, an inconvenience. Naruto had vowed never to let his children ever feel that way if he ever settled down, which was a greater uncertainty for him than anyone else he knew, seeing as he was a Jinchuriki and had an organization of S-ranked shinobi that made it their business to hunt him down and extract the Kyuubi from him. If they weren't assholes trying to kill me, they could have the damn thing. Ever since he found out he was the host to his parents' killer, his resentment for the Kyuubi had grown exponentially. He hated the beast, pure and simple. If it was within his power, he'd make the fox suffer for eternity. To think I felt sorry for him. As much as he feared the fox, he knew it was not much different from a caged bird, and in some ways, he could relate to it. But there was nothing in this world that could make him forgive the Biju for killing his parents and subsequently making his life a living hell. He could only imagine now what life would have been like if his parents were alive. He doubted he would have to hide his secret. Naruto released a sigh. It wasn't like him to ponder what-if scenarios. As comfortable as he was, he knew it was time to get going. He was rested well enough, and he had a deadline to make. 1 day down, 6 more to go, he thought as he got up and shouldered his bag. Chapter 21: The Climb. Mount Kunguran Jungle. The earth trembled and rumbled forebodingly as the trees shook as though they were about to be uprooted, casting leaves and fruits to the ground. A shout could be heard from a distance in the lush, tropical jungle afoot the great mountain, followed by the distinct sounds of a feral roar and an angry trumpet as Naruto ran for dear life, jumping over bushes and trunks, ducking under low-hanging branches and sidestepping a lounge of lizards, hissing and snapping their razor-sharp teeth at his ankles. Fuck me! It had been 3 days since Naruto had set foot in the jungle, by which time he had gained new appreciation for the challenge he had set himself with. His clothes were torn and he looked like he had lost some weight. The bags under his eyes indicated it had been a while since he had a good night's sleep. He would have taken the time to berate himself some more if it were the time or place. But given the fact he had a pissed-off jungle cat and elephant on his tail, now was neither the time nor the place. In fact, now wasn't the time much for anything other than getting the hell out of there. A feral growl prompted him to look over his shoulder for a second. It looked like his new friends got in a tussle with the lizards. The jungle cat swiped at the reptiles and bore at fangs whilst the elephant behind it reared in terror. Naruto sighed in relief. Well, that was lucky. As soon as he finished that thought, a rhino charged through the jungle and made a beeline for the young shinobi. Quick on his feet, Naruto jumped on its horn and used it as a springboard to launching into a tree. The jungle trees were rather dense, and usually occupied by all manners of creatures he usually avoided, but he wasn't exactly in a position to be picky. Crouched on a thick branch, he looked down to the animals. It seemed that his presence had set off some kind of battle royale amongst them. The rhino joined the fray, charging into the jungle cat with its horn. Naruto felt a pinch of guilt. It hadn't been his intent, but if he hadn't been sighted by the jungle cat and cut through the elephant's territory, it wouldn't have led to this. Then he reminded himself of the fact that they would have killed him and tore up him open just like they were doing to one of the lizards if they had caught him. The guilt quickly faded. Interestingly enough, the conflict kind of reminded him of his history lessons in his academy days. An odd sensation roused him from his thought as he found a snake slithering up his arm. Suffice to say, he hadn't been aware of the sounds a man could make when truly terrified. He had no reservations of guilt whatsoever when he jammed a kunai in the snake's skull and furiously shook it off. He rubbed his arm to get rid of the disgusting sensation tingling in his limb. A high-pitched laugh caught his attention as he turned and found a monkey hanging upside down by its tail. He nearly had you! Upon closer inspection of its red fur and amber eyes, Naruto recognized the monkey for the leader of the pack of rascals that had accosted him on his first day. You! Me! The monkey replied cheerfully. The name's Yankazaru! The mischievous ape held a particularly enticing piece of fruit in its hand. Want some? Naruto grudgingly accepted the banana and peeled it immediately. He was famished, and beggars couldn't be choosers. Naruto, is that your name? Yensha asked. He nodded, took a bite. He immediately felt rejuvenated, as though he had taken a handful of soldier pills. Wow! He blinked a few times. Do you like it? Yensha looked expectantly. It's from the center of the jungle. It's super dangerous to get, but it's really tasty and something. Energizing? Naruto suggested. Right. My dad says that's because the earth is super special in the center of the jungle, so all the fruit that grow there are really tasty. We have some on the mountain too, but that's too easy. You purposefully came down here to pick fruit you can get at home because it's more exciting that way? The monkey nodded as though it were the most understandable thing in the world. He stared for a moment, somewhat surprised he could relate to that. Well, okay then. Hey, wanna be friends? Yankazaru asked with the same enthusiasm. I don't know any humans from the outside world. Yep, he definitely reminds me of Konohamaru. He mirrored the little monkey's grin. Sure, he said as he grasped Yancha's tiny hand in his own. Friends, all right. Now that we're friends, I can help you. Follow me. Naruto chomped on the remaining piece of his banana as he followed suit. He had a feeling his new friend was going to be a handful but a worthwhile companion. Kanehigakure. Tsunade smiled pleasantly as the door to her office opened and Hyuga Hayashi strode in. Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice, Hayashi-dano. My pleasure, Hokage-dano. The Hyuga clan leader gave a modest bow. Tsunade gestured to he take a seat by her desk. I have called you here to discuss matters regarding your most recent clan report. Hayashi raised an intrigued eyebrow. I am listening. Tsunade opened the document in question and pointed to a highlighted section. In your report you made a particular comment regarding shinobi discipline, or lack thereof. I did. Hayashi nodded. I take it your own investigation in the matter has validated my concerns? It has. Tsunade acknowledged. Hayashi stroked a crease in his fine kimono. Have you come up with a solution then? My investigation concluded that the home garrison is structured in a way that is inefficient when it comes to dealing with complaints and exercising disciplinary action to an acceptable standard. Tsunade knew Hayashi knew where she was going with this but carried on anyway. Division authority figures are expected to uphold standards and to discipline their own. Naturally, this level of trust comes with its risks, and judging from the inordinate amount of complaints I've received in the short time I've been in office, it is clear to me the current model doesn't work and something must be done. You have my full attention, Hokage-dano. Hayashi said politely. My granduncle created the military police to uphold standards, and he entrusted the Uchiha clan with full authority as a means of a peace offering when my grandfather was elected to Hokage over Uchiha Madara. The Godain gave pause as she considered her words. This would take some finesse. Now the Uchiha are no longer with us and the military police has been shut down for the better part of a decade, and you wish for the Hyuga to revive the military. Hayashi anticipated her words. The proud clan leader shook his head. If that is the case, I must respectfully decline, Hokage-dano. The Uchiha were orchestrated and alienated due to their ties with that particular organization. I will not have the Hyuga clan suffer the same fate. Tsunade forced a smile. She had expected his initial response. I'm afraid I must insist, Hayashi-dano. The Hyuga clan leader did not like that and his expression reflected it. I beg your pardon. You insist? I'm afraid I must. Tsunade opened a drawer and withdrew a dossier and dropped it on the desk. This is a condensed log of the Hyuga clan's contribution to the village over the past 10 years. Taxes, missions, and virtually every noteworthy fact or figure is in here, including your offshore investments, on which you pay next to zero, if any at all, taxes through means of loopholes and privileges as a registered shinobi force of Hai no Kuni. Hayashi gave a hard stare. Where are you going with this, Hokage-dano? His voice rang cold as ice now, void of all pleasantry. This, Tsunade replied as she withdrew 3 significantly thicker dossiers and piled them up. These files alone belong to the Akimichi clan. As you can see for yourself, Hayashi-dano, the Hyuga have contributed next to nothing when compared to a clan of similar size and prominence. I should add the Akimichi clan's assets are estimated at barely a third of the Hyuga. I do not appreciate the implications, Hokage-dano. Hayashi composed himself. The Hyuga clan has time and again proven itself to be loyal to country and village. The Byakugan Dash is and remains a valuable asset. Tsunade interrupted calmly. However, and forgive me if I offend you, Hayashi-dano, it is my opinion that value has been sorely overstated. I beg your pardon. The Hyuga clan leader outraged. So much for finesse, Tsunade thought. Then again she was a straight shooter, always had been, and always would be. Hiruzen never seriously considered her to inherit his mantle for precisely that reason. The Sandaime preferred to play the game of politics, but Tsunade was a little too blunt, like a brick to the face. My predecessor felt the need to pander to your needs after the Uchiha massacre by allowing you special privileges, tax allowances and many other benefits. She cut to the chase. He even took great risk in maneuvering through a tense political climate after you killed the Kumo ambassador, and nearly triggered a war in the process. A war we would have very likely lost, I might add. Tsunade's hazel eyes boring to his. You have given nothing of value in return, until now. It is time the Hyuga repay their debts, and earn their keep once again. Hayashi regained his composure. His dignity as a clan leader prevented him from allowing further outbursts. Even if you strong-arm me into accepting this responsibility, the clan elders will never allow it, he informed. The Hyuga will not allow themselves to be the sole bearers of responsibility and the resentment of the village. You make quite the assumption there, Hayashidano, Tsunade said with an unnervingly pleasant smile. I have no intention of emulating my granduncle's mistakes. I am fully aware of the consequences leading the military police had for the Uchiha, and I will not visit such ill repute on you. Hayashi seemed, ever so slightly, relieved, though he was too dignified to acknowledge it. Then what do you propose? I propose you assume the position of chief of the military police, Tsunade proposed. Appointing members will be up to you and the shinobi assignment department. You will be free to recruit outside your own clan, of course. I believe the Akimichi, Nara, Yamanka and Inuzuka clans in particular would not be opposed to contributing, and if I refuse this proposal? Hayashi attempted one last challenge. Tsunade rested her chin on folded hands. Then consider all privileges revoked effective immediately, and be assured that I will personally see to it the Hyuga are reviewed with all due scrutiny. One way or another, you will repay your debts, Hayashi. Hayashi held her gaze, a light frown permeating his otherwise elegant features. After a moment, the Hyuga permitted himself a light, conceding smile, not doubt masking his contempt for her. You drive a hard bargain, Hokage-dano, Tsunade smiled inwardly. She had him by the balls and he knew it. I expect to hear from you soon, Hayashi-dano. The Godane rose out of her chair and gestured to the door, signaling the end of their meeting. What of the Uchiha boy? Hayashi asked as he stood. By our laws, he is entitled to a seat on the board of the military police. He is not yet of age and therefore he can claim neither his clan's seat nor his seat on the board. Tsunade assuaged. Even so, I will see to it he is informed. From what little I know of him, he is not unreasonable. He will understand. I leave it in your capable hands, Hokage-dano, the Hyuga clan leader said with a respectful bow before taking his leave. Tsunade sat back down with a satisfied grin. That had gone smoother than she thought it would. No doubt, Hayashi wasn't done resisting her yet, but she was confident she could handle him. She may have been a poor gambler, but there was one thing Tsunade never lost at when gambling, herself. She'd put her reputation in future as Hokage on the line to get things done. Forest of Death. 3 grueling days had passed by the time Sasuke found Anko on an elevated rock formation in a clearing surrounded by tall grass under the stars in the company of 4 tigers stretched out lazily with signs of puncture wounds apparent on their hides, most likely from her more venomous snakes. The specialist Jonin sat on the back of one particularly large tiger, an exotic-looking drink in her hand and a novel in the other. Hi there! Took you long enough to find me, you're only past the deadline by. She glanced to her watch. 48 hours. Not bad. Clothes torn, skin bruised and stomach painfully grumbling, Sasuke was in no mood for her antics. Take off the seal, was about all he managed as he lumbered towards her. If he could, he genuinely would have killed her. He had been barely out of his coma when she dragged him out here and had him fend for himself without the means of chakra for 3 days straight. Now, Anko jumped off the rock formation and sipped her drink. TSK. Tisk. She wagged her finger. That's no way to ask a favor from a lady. Didn't your mother teach you any manners? The look in his eye didn't bode well. Anko feigned embarrassment, placing a hand her mouth. Oh, right, my bad. Too soon? I mean, it's only been about 7 years. Sasuke's skin tightened painfully over his bony knuckles. I'm going to kill you. She stared at him blankly for a moment, and then snorted, guffawing as she carried on laughing for nearly a full minute. I'm sorry. I know you were supposed to look scary just now, but you've got bird shit in your hair and you look like you just fought off sexual advances from a bear, unsuccessfully I should add. Temper flaring, the Uchiha used the remainder of his strength to charge at her and swing an angry fist. Anko simply leant back and took another sip off her drink as he fell to the ground. That famous Uchiha temper, she chided as she put a foot on the back of his head. Before you pass out, I'm going to make this nice and easy for you to understand, okay? You listening? She pressed her foot down harder. Sasuke responded with an obscenity that earned him another mouthful of dirt. That is most certainly not a word you should call a lady. She relented only to prevent him from suffocating. Now listen up, I'm going to use my infinite wisdom and awesomeness to teach you how to deal with Orochimaru's little love bite. And no, this isn't optional. Until old Scarecrow comes and claims your sorry ass, you're my bitch, understood? Sasuke gave a muffled response. I'm going to take that as a yes. Anko decided cheerfully as a purple serpent slithered from out of her sleeve. You're too weak to get started right now, so I'm going to put you in a nice slumber for the next, I don't know, 10 hours? That ought to do it. When you wake up, we'll get started for realsies. The serpent struck Sasuke before he could do so much as shake his head, sinking its fangs in shoulder. Sleep followed shortly after. Koseki no Kuni. A wave of nostalgia washed over Jiraiya as he hiked up a deserted dirt road into a remote, relatively well-hidden mountain terrain. His journey had brought him to Mineral Country, or more specifically, the surrounding territory of Ishigekure. It had been a while since he had visited the village hidden amongst the stones, little over 2 years if he recalled correctly. Ishigekure was hidden in a maze of stone mountain terrain. Finding it without an up-to-date map was difficult to say the least. The shinobi of Ishi periodically rearranged the mountain with Doton Jutsu in case of an attack. Jiraiya had personally installed their barrier jutsu at the village's inception decades ago, and though he figured he could locate the village with a few hours, he decided to politely inform them of his presence by spiking his chakra levels. Most jonin were skilled enough to suppress their chakra subconsciously. It was common for S-ranked ninja to suppress their chakra to the extent they could even fool the average sensor ninja. A particular young man he knew was born with the ability to suppress his chakra like most Jinchuriki were. Jiraiya smiled at no one in particular as he continued to rapidly increase his chakra output. He steadied his chakra levels once they reached a level just above that of an elite jonin level. It had been a while and he wasn't expected, thus he decided against alarming them. A minor village like Ishigekure likely had little contact with Kage-level chakra. The sage counted the seconds in his mind. If it took them longer than 90 seconds for one of their squads to find him, they'd be considered sloppy. Konoha had an average response time of 50 seconds on the dot in case of a situation like this, due in part to their large barrier team division. 85 seconds later and Jiraiya was surrounded by at least 15 shinobi in standard gray Ishinin attire, weapons drawn. Not bad. Identify yourself, the shinobi in charge ordered. He was tall with a lean build, and wore a slate gray Ishigekure flak jacket over black shinobi trousers and turtleneck. The shinobi carried their standard climbing gear, hooks, cables and a small oxygen tank to name a few. He had a crop of short black hair, brown eyes and a stern look about him. Jiraiya knew the man, though he didn't recognize him immediately. "That's no way to talk to an old friend, Kuroki," he said with arms raised in mock surrender. "Gee, Jiraiya-sama!" The Ishinin rounded on his subordinates. "Lower your weapons! This is Jiraiya of the Leaf, a legendary shinobi and friend to our village." Kuroki approached Jiraiya with an outstretched hand. They clasped arms and embraced briefly. "You're in charge of a squad of your own now, huh?" It felt like it was only yesterday when he met the Ishi Jonin 20-odd years ago. He had been a rambunctious child, eager to learn ninjutsu and prove himself useful to his newly found village. Kuroki beamed. "It has been too long, Jiraiya-sama." 2 years was it? Sounds about right, the sage affirmed. "So, are you going to escort me to the village?" "Of course." Kuroki signaled his squad with rotating gesture. "Move out, we're escorting Jiraiya-sama to the village." Moments later the Ishinin were escorting Jiraiya down a series of turns in the maze-like terrain. They made small talk during their trek. Kuroki had a great many questions and Jiraiya was in a good enough mood to humor him. It was clear from their expressions that Kuroki's subordinates weren't used to their captain being so cheerful. Jiraiya had some questions of his own after they spoke at length of his travels. "How is Kinzen doing?" "Kinzen-sama is in good spirits," Kuroki informed with sudden apathy. "I am sure he will be delighted to have your company." He wasn't being completely honest, but Jiraiya decided not to press it. "He drank me under the table last time. I'm here for payback. Even brought some sake from Mount Maiboku for the occasion." The Ishinin merely smiled and muttered a forced response before picking up the pace, his initial excitement now clearly overshadowed by something heavy on his mind. "We're here," Kuroki announced a short while later. They had arrived at the stone gates of Ishigekure no Sado, 30 feet tall, complete with steel doors and watchtowers. They were welcomed back with relatively little fanfare. Jiraiya noticed the looks as Kuroki led him through the modest village. For whatever reason, his presence seemed to puzzle the people of the Hidden Stone. That was odd in and of itself considering the village's amiable ties with Konoha and, in the past at least, considerable admiration for the Sannin in particular. Jiraiya and Orochimaru had trained a great many of their youngsters who were now most likely jonin like Kuroki. Jiraiya had fond memories of when the women used to throw themselves at him. There were decidedly less people out and about as well, far less than what Jiraiya had expected. He had fond memories of the village's liveliness, which was nowhere to be found now. They arrived at the largest building in the village located at its northern walls. It was a square, gray building made of concrete, surrounded by steel gates and barbed wire. Looks like Kinzen renovated. An uneasy feeling was gradually growing in the pit of Jiraiya's stomach. He was well aware of the tense political climate between stone and rock, and how it had reached new heights shortly after the invasion when Konoha was weakened. There had even been a few skirmishes, of which Ishii had lost significantly more than they won. Kuroki, I haven't heard from Kinzen in a while, so I'm going to have asked you. The younger man tensed. Did IWA pull anything recently? I'm not talking about minor skirmishes. Did something happen? I'm not at liberty to speak for the village, Jiraiya-sama. Kuroki replied respectfully, a somewhat apologetic look in his eye. I am sure Kinzen-sama will answer your questions. This way, please. Jiraiya followed his lead as the squad broke off to stand guard at the entrance. The interior of the village headquarters was plain and modest, gray like seemingly everything else in the village. Through here, please. Kuroki gestured to a set of double doors leading to an office, and took his place by the door. Jiraiya gave him a curious look over before turning the handle and pushing through into the office. Jiraiya, old friend. The Toad Sage looked across the room to a man roughly his own height and somewhat bulkier build, with a lighter tan, brown shoulder-lengthy hair and green eyes. The man wore Ishigekyo garb with a white robe over it, much like a kage. That's new, Kinzen grinned. It's been too long. It sure has, Kinzen. Jiraiya grinned as they met in a brotherly embrace halfway across the room. You've put on weight. Kinzen patted his considerable gut, though his arms were still muscly and well-defined even through his clothes. I suppose I have. Come sit with me. I hope you brought some of that Mount Maiboku sake. Oto no Kuni, Otogekure headquarters. Orochimaru finished rereading the letter in his hand and lazily discarded it. Feel free to read it. He permitted from his throne as Kabuto lurched over to pick it up. It is of no interest to me. Kabuto moved under a torch in the poorly lit cavern, spectacles shining in the light as he read the contents of the letter. Interesting. He mused as finished reading. So the time and date of the summit have been finalized. He paused a moment. I take it you have no plans of attending, Orochimaru-sama? None whatsoever. The Sannin confirmed as he reached for a glass beside him, swirling the blood-red concoction in it. It was one of many tonics his modified body required him take every so often. Kabuto pushed up his glasses. Your absence will be noted. The shogun is known to hold grudges, Orochimaru-sama, as am I. The villainous snake reminded his subordinate. If Sojin decides to take this as a slight and does something foolish, he will know precisely why neither Akatsuki nor the Great Five have been able to take me down. I have no doubt you can crush him if you wish it so, Orochimaru-sama, but… Kabuto said as he folded the letter and walked up the steps to the throne. If I may speak freely? Orochimaru nodded. Speak your mind, Kabuto. Orochimaru-sama, there is no reason why you shouldn't attend this summit. You could use Sojin's support to settle matters with Akatsuki. They've been a thorn in our side for quite some time. The bespectacled spy placed the letter on the stand next to a tray of potions. Powerful friends are always of use, one way or another. Is that not why you wish to recruit Tsunade to your cause? Perhaps, Orochimaru considered. However, it is unlikely Akatsuki don't already have him in their pocket. In his earlier letter he stipulated I hand over the ring if I wish to attend. Kabuto gave some thought to the facts. How likely do you think it is the leader will be present, Orochimaru-sama? Highly improbable. Orochimaru answered, tightly gripping his armrest with his free hand. Most likely Pain will send Kakuzu to pose as the leader of AIM and Akatsuki. He is far too secretive and self-important to reveal himself at such an occasion. I see. Kabuto pushed his glass. If it is Kakuzu he sends, then there is far less to worry about. I believe this summit could be very informative, Orochimaru-sama. Orochimaru unhinged his jaw with a sickening pop and poured the potion down his throat, grimacing at the putrid taste. Very well. The Sannin breathed heavily. If you feel so strongly about it, I will consider it. He wiped his mouth and reclined as the disgusting taste stuck to his freakishly long tongue. Perhaps this summit could prove fruitful in unanticipated ways. The tonic took its toll on his body. Leave me. Very well, Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto bowed and showed himself out. Orochimaru growled in pain. His vessel was beginning to reject him already, sooner than the last, and that one had been unusually short already. It became apparent to the Sannin that battling his former sensei and teammates along with his intensive experiments were taking their toll on his body. He needed a new vessel. Soon, Mount Kunguran jungle, clouds captivated his eyes as Naruto stood at the bottom of the mountain, head turned back so far his neck was starting to ache. That's some mountain. Yeah, it takes super long to get up there. Yankazaro hopped off his shoulder. Not for me though. I'm super fast, I can climb it no problem. Ahu! Naruto acknowledged absent-mindedly. How many times had he regretted declaring a deadline for himself again? He had lost count by now. I guess it'd be cheating if I flew up there, huh? Yancha's eyes widened with childlike awe. You can fly? No, but I have a buddy who can. Well, Senzaro wasn't exactly a buddy. It was perfectly clear to him the Falcons only allowed him to summon them because they wanted him in their camp because of his strong chakra. It was flattering, but Naruto wasn't going to let that blind him to the facts. His old self might have, but he'd been listening to and learning from the old man and Jiraiya. Hell, even Tsunade had her occasional nuggets of wisdom to share. Don't be an idiot, was a particularly good piece of advice the Godame had parted with him. If only he had remembered before the absurd deadline popped into his head. Yeah, I'm an idiot, he said quietly to himself, continuing to look at the mountain. It seemed even more insurmountable after looking at it for so long. You can summon? Yensha asked. Is it apes? Dad tells me only human Sarutobi can summon monkeys. Human Sarutobi? Naruto tore his eyes from the mountain and raised a questioning eyebrow. We're all Sarutobi here, apes and humans. The monkey explained simplistically. We belong to the same clan. All of us. We're like a big family. Cool, huh? Naruto's expression softened with envy for a moment. Yeah, it is. He extended his arm and let his new companion climb on his back. I think I'm going to have to climb this on my own, so hold tight. Hold on tight for what? Yensha asked as he began to step back and fixed his bracer on properly. Cool! The young ape exclaimed when the blades protruded from the rare metal. Naruto figured he had gotten a long enough lead and checked his equipment before taking a runner's stance. You ready? Ready for what? Hold on tight. Naruto began to run, quickly reaching his top speed whilst charging chakra to both his legs and his hands. He leapt off the ground with a massive, chakra-enhanced jump and converted the chakra in his hands to wind. Futon, Shueishin Sho! Naruto timed the release of his propulsion palm technique to the best of his ability, aiming to release at the optimum time to gain as much air as possible. As gravity began to take effect, he released a power stream of air. He expected the worst, but hoped for the best. The strain on his wrists was already becoming apparent, and it was painful enough for him to force him to close his eyes. So you can fly! Yensha squealed excitedly. Naruto opened an eye and could hardly believe how high he was. And he was still going! Quickly, he shifted torso and corrected his course to the mountain. He could hardly believe how high his feet were from the ground. Usually he released his jutsu in one big burst, and it hurt like hell. But as it turned out, while releasing in a stream hurt even more, he got a whole lot more of a bang for his buck. He couldn't help but shout to the heavens as he soared. Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Yensha screamed in his ear. Lost in euphoria, Naruto forgot about the pain, and failed to keep track of how much chakra he was expending. Like a pool with a giant hole in it, his chakra was rapidly draining, and if that wasn't bad enough, for some reason his body kept pushing more of it into his jutsu. He had aimed for a boost but had taken off like a rocket instead, and like all rockets, he eventually hit something hard. The last thing Naruto could remember of his flight was a lot of screaming and hard mountain surface. Elsewhere, Uchiha Shursue's body lied on a slab of stainless steel. The color was drained from his gray and bloated skin. A man in a lab coat stood by the corpse speaking into a recording device. The individual identified as Uchiha Shursue has likely been dead for a period between 48 and 72 hours. The blood on his fingertips and trauma on the optic nerves in the eye sockets indicate deliberate removal. A curious note, there is considerable more trauma in the right eye socket, possibly indicating forceful removal by either the individual or another party. The man in the lab coat paused the device. Take that as you will, Uchiha-sama. The cause of death? Fugaku's stern voice echoed through the morgue. I was just getting there, Uchiha-sama. The device resumed with a click. The cause of death is asphyxia caused by drowning, however there are defensive wounds present on the forearms. These consistent with defending oneself from multiple attackers. The wound in the subject's lower left abdomen would have likely killed Uchiha-san before long without intensive medical care. It's quite a peculiar wound. At first glance it appears the entry wound was caused by a short blade, a kunai or tanto perhaps, but upon further investigation we found residual wind chakra going as far as the exit wound, indicating chakra flow usage. The device clicked again. Wind chakra? Fugaku repeated. He looked troubled. Yes, the pathologist affirmed. It is quite rare in Hai no Kuni. Do you perhaps know something, Uchiha-sama? No. That would be all. The clan head remembered his etiquette and nodded respectfully. Thank you, doctor. My condolences, Uchiha-sama. The doctor gave a polite bow. I shall go prepare the body for burial then. I'm afraid I'm going to have to insist this stays off the books, doctor. The Uchiha clan will be investigating this matter internally. We are prepared to compensate you for your silence. But Uchiha-sama if that is all, doctor, one of my clansmen will come to retrieve the body. I thank you for your cooperation. Fugaka looked to the son. Itachi, we're leaving. Itachi stared blankly at Shirsui's face. There was a ghost of a smile on his features. Shirsui's life had ended early and in tragedy, yet he had welcomed death with a smile knowing he had done his duty. Now, Atachi! Itachi woke with a start, gasping for air and coughing. He was drenched in cold sweat and shivering. Shirsui plagued his mind when he closed his eyes, so he kept them open, and though unfocused his mind vaguely recognizing his surroundings. They had found a cave to spend the night in on the way to their assigned mission. Itachi rubbed the sleep from his eyes and got up, reaching for his cloak. Kisame stoked a shallow fire by the entrance to the cave. You're up early, the former Kirinin remarked. I'm not tired. Itachi lied as he sat down and rubbed his hands. After a long silence he said, It looks like we're in the clear. From leader? Kisame stoked the fire some more. Itachi nodded. I had a feeling he might have lied to us. Can't hurt to be paranoid. Kisame shrugged and offered the stoking stick to his partner. If you're not tired, I'm going to get some shut-eye. Itachi nodded and focused on the fire as the large shark man reached for Samahada. Hey Itachi, what is it, Kisame? Who's Shirsui? Itachi looked over his shoulder. Why do you ask? You said his name a few times in your sleep. Kisame almost sounded worried. It's none of my business, but there's only one Shirsui I've heard of, an Uchiha by the moniker Shenshin no Shirsui. He was young, but even I heard of him on occasion. Good night, Kisame. Itachi turned back to the fire and poked at the flames. His partner lumbered off without so much as a grunt, evidently respecting their boundaries. Itachi was grateful, both for Kisame's understanding and the opportunity to reflect by himself. It had been years since Shirsui haunted him. The last time he had such dreams was before the massacre. It was to honor Shirsui that he agreed to carry out the mission. You're my best friend and the only one I can count on. Protect the village, and the Uchiha name. He had a promise to keep then. He had stained his soul, but the dreams had stopped. Why was Shirsui once again haunting him? What unfinished business did he have in Konoha that his promise demanded he deal with? Koseki no Kuni. Jiraiya pushed away his plate and dapped his mouth with a napkin. All right, I admit it, that has to be best steak I've ever had. The sage gave a word of thanks to the servant that took away their plates away. I told ya, Kinzen said as he refilled their drinks. As good as it is to you, see, old friend, unlike you, I do have some responsibilities, so this'll be my last one for the night. How did you get to be in charge of this village, Kinzen? Jiraiya reached for his drink. I thought you guys ran this place as a council. I've noticed you got yourself a fancy white robe as well. No need to be suspicious, old friend, Kinzen said, belching as he waved him off dismissively. A lot has changed since the last time you were here. The village council agreed that it would be best to restructure our village. I don't know how I got this job either. I didn't even volunteer for it. The robe was the council's idea. It's supposed to make me look more imposing. They think the world will take us seriously if I dress up like one of the Gakage. I know it's stupid. Then why do it? Jiraiya feigned indifference, but he knew better. It was often the little things that betrayed the bigger picture. Beats me. Kinzen rose out of his chair and pat his stomach with a depressed sigh. Can you believe it, Jiraiya? I'm an overweight shinobi. How does that happen? You kidding? You could pass for a swimsuit model next to an Akimichi. They shared a good laugh at the joke, exaggerated as it was. Ever observant, Jiraiya had noticed Kinzen's appetite seemed somewhat odd. He never knew his old war buddy to be much of an eater. What had changed? Was it stress from his responsibilities? New? Something else perhaps? Why are you here, Jiraiya? Kinzen seemed eager to get to the bottom of it. I mean, I love you like a brother, but the last time you were here you were gone in minutes. You know why I'm here, Kinzen. Jiraiya put his drink down and held the village leader's gaze. I'm here for the summit, Kinzen. It was apparent Kinzen was displeased by that. He looked pale for a moment, as though horrified by the news. Look, Jiraiya, I told you I've got it covered. Ishi will stand with Konoha. You have my word on that. Isn't that enough anymore? I trust you with my life, Kinzen. Jiraiya lied smoothly. Maybe he did once, but something was definitely off. He had sensed it the entire evening. It's not like Konoha thinks Ishi is up to something nefarious. We've bled together, old friend. I'm simply here to make sure things go without incident. Kinzen frowned at him. And how do you expect to do that? I'll be escorting you to the summit in Shimo no Kuni. Jiraiya reached for his drink as he let that sink in. I'm not going to let you go in there unprotected. Sojin is no joke. You insult me, Jiraiya. We both know your concern for my safety isn't what spurred this. The Hidden Stone leader gave a hard stare. I'd rather you keep your distance, Jiraiya. For all our sakes, it's precisely for all our sakes that I have to accompany you, Kinzen. Jiraiya asserted bluntly. Come on, it'll be fun. The sage tried to lighten the mood by patting Kinzen on the shoulder and cracking a smile. Just like old times. The two of us doing something stupidly dangerous and getting away with it. Eventually Kinzen's stern gaze relented. He shook his head, chuckling a little. You're a stubborn son of a bitch, you know that? I wouldn't know. They laughed heartily over the old inside joke. Either of them had known their parents. Mount Kunguran. Naruto awoke with a groan and a throbbing headache. It felt like he'd split his skull. Hell, he might have. Is that blood? Naruto removed his hand from the back of his head and found a thin coat of mostly dried blood. Fuck, you're awake! Yancha bounded over the small plateau they were situated on. I thought you died. I might have. Naruto sat up with a pained grimace. Fuck, that hurts. I'm definitely shelving that jutsu till I know how to control it. You flew! Yancha exclaimed with awe. It was awesome! Can we do that again? Just the thought of repeating the experience got another groan out of him. Hell no. Don't you see the state I'm in? I need to figure out how to control the jutsu before I can use it. Yancha pouted and offered him his water flask. You look thirsty, thanks. Naruto carefully raised the flask to his lips and swallowed a mouthful. How long was I out? Like a few hours. Naruto looked upwards. It was night time. The stars littered the indigo sky and shined beautifully through the clouds. For better or worse, I sure could get used to this sky. He looked to the young ape. Hey, have you got any fruit left? Yancha shook his head. Sorry. Well, might as well get started climbing then, huh? Naruto reached for his bag. His head had started to clear up, and the pain had subsided significantly. Hey, why are your eyes like that? Huh? Naruto raised an eyebrow, then reached for his kodachi and unsheathed it. Blue, slit eyes reflected on the blade. For a second he panicked. He feared something terrible had happened when he was unconscious, but he quickly connected the dots. I must have hurt myself worse than I thought. Exactly how close had his brush been with death? It scared him just thinking about it. Hop on, Yancha! Naruto found his footing and began to climb slowly but surely. It was a good thing his new companion was so light. We've only got a few days to get up there. Why? The monkey asked. Naruto didn't answer at first. Why was he in a hurry? To save face? Was it to prove to the old man he wasn't just full of shit when he vowed to make it in a week? No, that's not it. It was out of necessity. He didn't have the luxury of time. He had made a promise, one he intended to keep. I've got people waiting for me back home. Family? He was about to say no, but he felt that wasn't the truth. He might have been orphaned shortly after coming into the world, but he did have a family, unconventional though it may be. Irika, I am, the old man, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizen and Kakashi, they were all family to him. It didn't matter whether they weren't related by blood or he'd come to know them fairly recently. They were his family. Yeah. Family. Naruto began to find his footing faster and more efficiently, driven not by the desire to meet some foolish deadline he had set for himself, but by desire to go home. It had only been a few days since he had left, but he already longed to be back in Konoha. The only way that could work was if he completed his training here. Until then, he was better off being separated from them. He'd only attract dangers he couldn't protect them from the way he was. He needed to get stronger. A lot stronger. He vowed to never let himself be so powerless again. Not before Atachi, not before Orochimaru, not before anyone ever again. Days later, Shimo no Kuni, Frost Country was as cold as one could expect. It snowed perpetually and the temperature never rose above a single digit. The country was part of a buffer between Lightning Country and the other great 5 shinobi villages. For a country with a rather harsh climate, it managed to stay self-efficient for the most part and modestly prosperous, largely due in part to their vast supply of natural resources ranging from crude oil to minerals and ores. Its ruler, the daimyo of Shimo no Kuni, was known by many to be something of a hard ass. Old and prolific, the daimyo had a reputation of being prideful and easily angered, a foul-spirited man when crossed, and conniving in equal measure. He was sure to benefit in one way or another from allowing the summit take place in one of his royal estates, though exactly how far his involvement extended wasn't entirely clear. Shimo no Kuni had a standing shinobi force, but they were nothing more than glorified thugs that enforced the daimyo's rule and rarely operated abroad. Jiraiya made a note to look into exactly what the daimyo stood to gain at a later date as he stifled a yawn. His cohort plowed along, clad in thick winter clothing. He massaged his arms trying to warm up. He wasn't a man for the cold. How he longed for the warmth of Hai no Kuni. Kinzen, did we really have to get up this early? The summit isn't until tomorrow. He had to raise his voice over the screeching wind. His skin felt raw on his face and his teeth clattered uncontrollably. Trouble keeping up at your fragile old age? Kinzen jibed childishly, laughing at the sage's expense. Jiraiya bristled with mock indignation. Hardly, old friend. A member of their Ishinin cohort approached with another cloak in hand. Please take this, Jiraiya-sama, thanks. The toad sage was already wearing 3 layers of clothing, but the cold still got to his bones. Why the hell would Sojin hold this meeting all the way out here? Why not on his own turf? I told you already, I don't know, Kinzen said, annoyed. He had been rather difficult about it. Perhaps being babysat by Jiraiya didn't sit well with him even now. And I don't want to hear you complain after you twisted my arm into letting you come. I didn't twist anything, I merely insisted. Jiraiya denied as he caught up and matched his companion's pace. What's with you anyways, my presence making you feel inadequate in front of your men? Kinzen frowned, not at all amused. You don't trust me, do you? He spoke at a register at which only Jiraiya could hear him. That may not be the case, but that's how it feels, he added before he sage could interrupt. I don't like this hand-holding, Jiraiya. I trust you with my life, Kinzen, Jiraiya said seriously. But not with that of Konoha. I'm sorry, but you know how it is. You know how this works. Kinzen muttered something self-deprecating perhaps, under his breath and shook his head. I understand. We might be friends, but we have different priorities when it comes down to it. Konoha will always come first for you and Ishi will always first for me, no matter what the cost. For what it's worth, I do worry for your personal safety, Jiraiya said sincerely. They were like brothers after all. Sojin is a dangerous man. He's preferred to stick to his own turf for the most part, but if he's reaching out to the villages, whatever he's planning has to be big. What do you think he'll want from us? Kinzen asked curiously. Manpower would be my first guess. Jiraiya hazarded an educated guess. When it comes down to it, that's what sets the Great Five apart from the smaller villages. That, and resources of course. Kinzen rubbed his chin in thought. Kusa has been stockpiling weapons for as long as Sojin's been in charge. True, but he's never had enough hands to put swords in, Jiraiya pointed out. Which is a good thing for all of us. What little balance existed between the Great Five and minor shinobi villages was fragile to say the least. If there ever was a power shift, and an abrupt one at that, the consequences would almost certainly be dire for all of them. Sojin had bided his time since his ascension to leadership, carefully picking his battles and generally avoiding direct confrontation with any of the Great Five. It was in a shinobi's nature to avoid unnecessary conflict, and so was planning to take a stronger foe down when the opportunity presented itself. The odd feeling Jiraiya had been feeling all morning in his stomach got a touch worse. How much longer? We'll arrive at the royal estate soon. You'll have to disguise yourself before we get there, Kinzen replied. The Ishinin hesitated for a moment. Look, Jiraiya, if you're having doubts then just don't come. Wait for us here, Jiraiya responded with a stern look. My mind is made up, Kinzen. All right, old friend. Kinzen finally surrendered completely, nodding as he picked up the pace and joined his other guards at the front of their march. For a second Jiraiya could have sworn he heard him muttering something again. The next day, Mount Kunguran, Naruto blurred into motion, dashing between ledges and footings, his new companion riding on his shoulder, and his eyes set in a permanent glare, in the middle of fighting off a tribe of mountain apes. This is the last time I'm following your advice, brat, he shouted as he dodged a melon-sized rock aimed for his head. Shortcut my ass! Yanshao blurted a string of apologies as they took off, though he wasn't entirely apologetic. They usually sleep during the day, and I did tell you to be really quiet. You're the one that woke them up! Naruto outraged as the apes gained on them. He was starting to think he was cursed maybe, given how he had experienced next to no luck since he stepped foot in the valley. Why are they even attacking anyway? I thought you guys were a clan. They're not Sarutobi clan members. They belong to another clan. Their clan lost to the Sarutobi clan centuries ago when they tried to take over the mountain, so Enma-sama banished them. Thanks for the history lesson. Perhaps he would have been more interested in learning about the Sarutobi clan's history later down the road. When he wasn't getting chased by a pack of bloodthirsty orangutans, perhaps. A sparkling light caught the corner of his eye. A split second later, a spear lacerated his left bicep and drew line of blood. Son of a bitch! Naruto responded in kind and threw a hail of shuriken back. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He didn't have time to look, but if their angry screeches were any indication, he had repaid at least on them. Yensha, stop fucking laughing! This is not funny! When did he become such a hard ass? It was a good question, but now wasn't the time to give it serious thought. Suetun, Mizurapa! He stopped on a ledge and spat a torrent of water for good measure. Yensha pointed to the sky. Look, we're almost there. See, there is a shortcut after all. We didn't take your shortcut, you little psychopath. Naruto grit his teeth as he continued to make his way up. He hadn't eaten for some time now, and his reckless new companion had a way of effortlessly pushing his buttons. Maybe his hunger and lack of sleep was making him paranoid, but he had a feeling the little ape wasn't an innocent child but rather a diabolical mastermind sent to thwart his progress. Yensha was right though. They were getting closer to the clouds now, and the biting cold was far from pleasant, but he was getting there. Konohagakure, Forest of Death. Onyx eyes set in a hateful glare widened upon impact as Sasuke dropped on his back painfully, and the air rushed from his lungs. Anko towered over him, an infuriating grin on her face. Anyone tell you sound like a bitch when you take a beating? Sasuke jammed a kunai in her leg, which subsequently turned to mud along with the rest of the clone. Bitch! Potty mouth! Anko stepped from the surrounding forestry, sticking out her tongue, and a hand on her hip. You look about tapped. She dug her hands in the pockets of her trench coat and turned to leave. Well, this was fun. See you soon, Sasa-chan. Another projectile whizzed past her hair, taking a few strands of hair as he narrowly cocked her head. Where do you think you're going? He was breathing heavily and leant on his knees to stay up, but he wasn't done yet. I'm not done with you yet, Anko grinned in a feral manner. You coming on to me, kid? That's disgusting. The Uchiha spat. The humiliation he was feeling was far worse than the pain she had visited upon him. As much as he hated to think it, it was highly probably not even his Kekkei Genkai would make a difference. She was simply too fast, and too vicious, and she punished him without hesitation whenever he left an opening. You're a fucking sociopath. The sociopath in question raised an arm. Sanaijashu! A knot of snakes hurled toward the young Uchiha. Sasuke ignored the screaming pain in his thighs and jumped and threw a kunai. Anko caught the first between her index and middle fingers like child's play. He wasn't done, however, and quickly equipped more projectiles whilst airborne and threw them in quick successions. Anko continued to dodge with minimal effort without moving from her position until she noticed the odd trajectories her new student was throwing them in. Surely she couldn't have actually inflicted brain damage to cause his aim to be so off? It was until a split second before it was too late that she noticed the odd vectors were set up for a ricochet attack pattern. Anko moved the kunai she caught early in front of her in the nick of time as she deflected a projectile aimed for the base of her neck. He's managed to do it without his Sharingan. Not bad. Sasuke touched down and instantly collapsed to the ground under his own weight. He was absolutely spent but managed a satisfied smirk as the purple-haired snake charmer noticed the line of red on her cheek. She hadn't even noticed the second projectile. Oh ho ho, you are so lucky you're about to pass. Her voice echoed as he drifted into unconsciousness. Anko stooped and grabbed him by the back of his shirt and unceremoniously dragged him off. Hai no kuni kusa no kuni border, root base. The room was dark, lit by just one industrial light. A man lied strapped to a chair, screaming and writhing with agony as another pulled a syringe from his arm and tossed it aside. The man in the chair wore Kusanin attire. The other wore a black cloak over shinobi gear and a Badger ANBU mask. Talk! The torturer commanded in a monotone voice. We know you were the on-duty cryptanalysts who sent out the encrypted messages. The Kusanin writhed some more, his face red and jaws clenched, saliva drooling down his chin as he tried to contain himself. Fuck you! Badger turned his head questioningly. The summit, Where is it taking place and what is its purpose? Ask your mother! The Kusanine spat on his face. Saliva dripped from Banjer's mask as the root operative turned to the shadows with an outstretched hand. Ray stepped from the darkness carrying metallic tray with more syringes. She wore a pure white mask and similar dark attire. The senior operative reached for another and administered another dosage. The captive released a blood-curdling scream as he trashed against his bindings. The serum ravaged his nervous system, resulting in blinding pain so intense, his bleeding gums paled in comparison as he tried to clench his jaws shut forcefully. Denying them results was the Kusanine's only means of resistance now. As he continued to scream, Ray watched on unperturbed by the scene. She was more concerned about the time it was taking. Danzo had recently started to send her new mission orders out of the blue. What little time off she could scrape together, she spent working with Root. Perhaps he no longer trusted her? Did he know Atachi had removed his seal? She dismissed the notion for what seemed the 100th time. If he knew, then he wouldn't be sending her on missions. She would have been dead already. Unless it was some kind of test. Your sister, is she alive? Why had Uchiha Atachi undone her seal? The only way he would have known would be if he had been Root himself at one time, meaning he couldn't have lied when he said he had once been a Root operative. Her mind started to drift. How long could she keep up living two lives? She wore a mask with Team 312. Not even the astute Nara knew what she was hiding. How would they react if they ever found out? How would Naruto react? She had tried not to think of him as much. Her new assignments were sufficient distractions at first, but lately she had been thinking of him more than usual. She knew she couldn't ever admit it, but she missed him. Of course, if she were to ever admit she could possibly be compromised when it came to him, she would most definitely be terminated. The torturer withdrew and discarded the second syringe. What is the purpose of the summit? What will be discussed and who will be attending? HNNG. The Kusanine shifted his tongue in his mouth. Don't bother, we took out your cyanide capsule, Badger said coldly as he backhanded his captive. Talk, go fuck yourself, the Kusanine whispered. Perhaps you could use some perspective. The torturer droned mechanically as he grabbed his victim by the mouth. There is no question whether you will die here, alone. You will die. The only question that remains is how you die, and it is you who will determine that. Will you die a peaceful, dignified death, or will you subject yourself to pain beyond your wildest imagination before you draw your last breath? The Kusanine held his tongue, eyes filled with hatred. The Root operative sighed. Where is a mind reader when you need one? Another, he ordered with an outstretched hand. Ray complied without hesitation, though not without adding. The next shot will kill him, you heard that? Badger relayed to his prey. Perhaps I'll administer smaller dosages over a longer period of time? That would work. Ray agreed, though it was a lie. The Kusanine didn't have much left in him. His death wasn't going to pleasant even if they stopped now. No more. The Kusanine moaned pitifully as he finally gave in. Please, no more. The Root operatives looked at one another for the briefest of moments. Then tell us what we wish know, Badger said coldly. The summit, it's a lie, a trap. A trap for who? The interrogator demanded. Just kill me. The Kusa intelligence operative simply began to laugh. Slowly at first, and then reaching a sudden crescendo as his laughter turned manic. Kill me! Please! Just kill me! His laughter turned to screams as Badger jabbed one final syringe of toxic in his neck. Ray remained unflinching behind her mask, calmly retrieving the discarded syringes before returning to the shadows. Shimo no Kuni, the summit was on. Village leaders from various minor villages sat around a large circular table. Representatives of the hidden villages of Stone, Waterfall, Rain, Star, Snow and Rain were amongst those present judging by the seating arrangements. There was also a seat assigned to the Hidden Sound, but whether or not it would be filled was up in the air. If there was anyone that could identify him, though Jiraiya knew it would probably be Orochimaru. It was for that reason he had gone through the trouble of and using some extensive semi-permanent body-modifying jutsu to change his body mass, scent, and the color of his eyes from gray to brown to match his dyed hair, which he had cut short. He even made sure to manipulate his larynx with chakra to produce a different voice that more closely resembled that of his comrades. He was disguised as one of them, wearing the standard Ishinin attire and gear. It had been a while since he needed to disguise himself so carefully, but he wasn't going to take any risks, certainly not when Orochimaru was involved. Jiraiya looked around the meeting room from his position, taking note of several potential exit strategies if worse came to worse. Kinzen looked anxious in his seat, already on his second glass of water, his eyes wandering to the entrance every few seconds in anticipation. Calm down, Jiraiya willed. Not only was it disappointing, it was incredibly worrisome. Kinzen looked so beleaguered. He was starting to consider whether his presence was a mistake. From the look Kuroki was giving him, that was probably the case. Too late to bow out now, Jiraiya thought as they were joined by a gray old man in purple robes. The Hidden Star leader, the sage identified. He was a mean old fart in his day. The self-proclaimed Sandaime Hashikage was one of the few that once met Sarutobi Hiruzen in battle in his prime and lived to tell the tale. 1. I see I am not the first Akahoshi. 2. Kinzen nodded politely. Well met, Kidahoshi Dano. Well met, Kinzen Dano. The Hidden Star leader sat in a assigned seat and dismissed his bodyguard. Jiraiya glanced to the man identified as Akahoshi and reverted his gaze back to the table as more individuals poured into the room. The sage recognized the leader of Takigakure, Gyurakami, accompanied by his son Shibuki and right-hand man Suayan. 3. Next were the shinobi of the Hidden Snow Village. Rogan Nadar, 4, had recently come to succeed the previous village leader. If Jiraiya recalled correctly, the Yukigakure nin had once bested Kakashi and forced him to retreat on a mission long ago. He was accompanied by armor-wearing bodyguards, a pink-haired kunoichi and a muscular, purple-haired shinobi. They took their place by the other bodyguards. Jiraiya wondered if a Shimagaki representative would show up at any point, seeing as they were guarding the castle. The mutual animosity between Shimo and Yukinin was notorious. He didn't give it much as thought as the leaders of various other minor villages poured in. Eventually only 3 seats remained unfilled: grass, rain, and sound. Jiraiya kept his eye on the door in anticipation. Maybe Orochimaru was going to be a no-show. Wouldn't that be nice? He didn't know what to make of Rain's representative, whomever that would be. The room fell silent after pleasantries were exchanged. They weren't here to chit-chat after all, and most of them were most assuredly rivals if not outright enemies once it was over. Jiraiya felt a mixture of apprehension, anxiety, and a pinch of exhilaration in the pit of his stomach, though he steeled himself as masterfully as only a shinobi of his caliber could. He was an uninvited guest in a room filled with some of the world's most dangerous and powerful individuals with limited exit strategies if things went sour. Undoubtedly, his presence would be seen and treated as an act of war if he was found out. Keep it together, Jiraiya. You're not a rookie at this, you haven't been for a long time. The Toad Sage had become quite the adept infiltration artist over his lengthy career. This wasn't the first time he had found himself in a situation like this, and God willing it wouldn't be the last. Heads turned to the entrance of the meeting room. Sojin no Shogun, the leader of Kazakage, entered the meeting room, unaccompanied, gliding like a ghost towards his seat on the far end of table from Kinzen. Jiraiya had never actually met, or even seen the man in person. The Kusa leader was something of a recluse, and until now had never been cause for immediate worry. As distasteful as it was, the sage likened him to Kusa's very own Shimura Danzo. Sojin was a tall, imposing figure that matched the sage's height, with tan skin covered in scars. He had long white hair tied in a ponytail and a lengthy white goatee. He wore a fine green cloak over his shinobi attire. A thick scar covered his seemingly permanently closed left eye. His remaining eye was amber. I thank you all for attending. For a man who was feared far and wide for his ferocious, cutthroat methods, Sojin had an unusually soft-spoken, vaguely grandfatherly voice. Forgive my tardiness, there were pressing matters that had to be resolved beforehand. You are not the only one, Sojin Dano, Gyurakami of the Hidden Waterfall said. It appears the representatives of AIM and Oto have yet to arrive. I just had words with the both of them, and they will both join us shortly, Sojin informed as he got comfortable in his seat. As though on cue, a man wearing a straw hat and a long black cloak with red clouds strolled joined them. Evening, he greeted with a baritone voice. The Hidden Waterfall leader rose from his seat, a look of outrage on his face. Akatsuki! There were similar reactions of shock amongst the other leaders and their bodyguards, but none quite as vitriolic. So you vermin were hiding in AIM then? Sojin looked from Gyurakami to the other leaders, taking in their reactions appraisingly, before finally turning to the Akatsuki member and nodding. Well, there is no reason to forget our manners, Jiraiya tensed. This was what he came for. Where there was trouble, you could bet the farm Akatsuki had their finger in the pie. The straw hat came off, revealing an Amigakure headband, a white hood, and dark scara and green pupils looming over a face mask. My name is Kakuzu. I am here as the Hidden Rain's leader representative and as well as the leader of Akatsuki. A tumultuous reaction followed. You've got to be kidding me, Jiraiya thought beneath a veil of calm. Never in a million years could he have anticipated something like this. But could he have? I thank you for revealing yourself. Urakami roared as water condensed from thin air in his hands and spiraled to form into a sword. Until now, Takigakure has had to wage war against a faceless enemy. It will be easier to destroy you now we know where you sleep. Gentlemen, calm yourselves, the shogun called patiently. We are not here to declare war. This summit's purpose is so we might find peace amongst ourselves as we endeavor on an opportunity that shall benefit us all far more than revenge over petty grievances. You have my ear, Sojun Dano. Kidahoshi of Hashigakure croaked from his side of the table. I am too old and my blood does not run quite as hot as others, but I have no time for games, as I am sure you know, being of the same era as I. The shogun nodded, smiling. I do indeed. If you would please be seated once more. The leader of the hidden grass looked expectantly to Urakami, who grudgingly sat down, though his eyes did not leave Kakuzu. Thank you. Well, that was entertaining. Heads turned once again to the entrance, as Orochimaru quite literally slithered into the room. I believe now is the time you were referring to? Not quite, but since you are already here. If Sojun wasn't pleased, he did an impeccable job of hiding it. More vermin? Urakami said with disgust. Orochimaru smirked. Can't we let bygones be bygones, old friend? After all, we are all going to be such good friends, aren't we? Only Orochimaru could stroll into a room full of people that wanted his head on a spike with supreme confidence, and mock them while he was at it. I believe an explanation is in order, Sojun Dano. The Hashikage spoke up. The hidden grass leader nodded. There is. If we can all be seated and keep our calm and wits about us. Orochimaru took his seat and crossed his arms, an amused grin on his serpentine features. You may want to adjust that scowl, Urakami-kun, it's rather intimidating. I believe you gave me your word you would behave yourself. Sojun rebuked the Sannin with a stern look. Please do not disrupt us again. It wasn't a request. Far from it. Looks were deceiving, but no one in that room took the hidden grass leader's soft-spoken imago for his true self. They all knew what he was capable of. Orochimaru bowed theatrically. Of course. Jiraiya wondered how long Orochimaru could continue like this, how many more bridges he could burn, how many more allies he could betray. It was damn near miraculous he had survived this long. There was something off about his presence. Something told him the serpent probably wouldn't have shown up were it not for his bespectacled toady. As the room finally settled down, Sojun cleared his throat. My honorable guests, as I said before, you have been invited to this summit to discuss a matter of great importance, an opportunity that could benefit us far more than any infighting over the table crumbs of the Great Five ever could. Kakuzudano came to me some time ago, and revealed himself as the leader of Amigakure and Akatsuki, and the true purpose of his organization. Naturally I was intrigued, and after hearing what he had to offer we came to form an alliance. Such information is typically not shared. Kidahoshi stroked his beard in thought. I believe this is where the opportunity comes in. It does indeed. Sojun nodded slowly. At my request, Kakuzudano allowed me to call a summit so that we could ensure a greater success through beneficial partnership between all of us. Kakuzu took his cue. I created Akatsuki many years ago to oust Hanzo. During the Civil War I vowed to have my vengeance against the Great Five whom exploited the war that tore my country apart. The day Hanzo fell was the day Akatsuki was reborn. Few outside of AIM knew of our existence. It was easy to escape scrutiny as I separated the Akatsuki from AIM and propped them up as an independent mercenary organization and successfully usurped business from the Great Five all over the world and taking missions no one else would have fear of political and military ramifications. A sound strategy. Nadar Roga of the Hidden Snow commented. You gave us quite a bit of trouble some years ago. Such is the nature of our business. Kakuzu replied evenly. Until now Akatsuki has been a faceless, highly profitable and efficient organization. Most noteworthy mercenary organizations are part of Akatsuki one way or another. Many don't even know who they really answer to. Urakami grew impatient. I take it there is a point to this tale of yours. Akatsuki is cheaper and more efficient than any one village out there, but there are things that not even we can accomplish. I have come here to invite you to join our alliance and share our profits. Kakuzu paused to look across the table. In exchange for your assistance to overthrow the Great Five, the room fell silent. Jiraiya clenched his fists. It doesn't get much more nefarious than that. His eye fell on Kinzen. If he says no, he might be killed on the spot. Even Nadara burst out in laughter, teal pupilless eyes wide with amusement. You don't mess around, do you? Well, I'm listening. You can't be serious. Girakami raised his voice. Take on the Great Five? We'd be crushed, individually, most assuredly. Sojin agreed calmly. But together. He spread his arms theatrically. Together we are a true force to be reckoned with. If you agree to join the Akatsuki Alliance, then you will become equal partners effective immediately, and you will enjoy both anonymity and spoils of war, including in Biju redistribution. Kakuza added with a sinister chuckle. But perhaps Takigakure does not see the need, given how close they have been to Konoha ever since the Shodai gave them the Nanabai. Close was nothing short of a gross exaggeration, Jiraiya thought, though they probably all knew it as well. Taki had once been close to Konoha, decades ago, but they had grown apart during the Nidame's era over various disputes. The Nidame was a great shinobi but not half the diplomat his brother was, and thus did not hesitate to strong-arm the hidden waterfall whenever they opposed him. By the time Hiruzen ascended to the position of Hokage, numerous bridges had been burned, and the hidden waterfall was one of them. Things had turned around since. The Sandaime had worked hard to accomplish that, but they were far from how they once were. I am no more fond of Konoha than you, but I am no fool. Girakami spat with distaste. Nor I will deny the Nanbai's worth, but you speak of matters you know nothing of, outsider. Your Jinchuriki is a diagnosed sociopath with no regard for your authority. Kakuza stated, holding his gaze. She comes and goes whenever she pleases and will not hesitate to kill even you if you oppose her. How do you know this? The village leader demanded. Kakuza sneered with no small measure of condescension. Amongst many other assets, Akatsuki has a vast and very reliable network of spies and information gatherers. We know a great many things about all of your villages and your top shinobi. The Akatsuki leader rose from his seat. Including your bodyguards. He averted his gaze from Girakami to Kinzen. Kinzen tensed under his gaze. Is he here? Kakuza said, much to Jiraiya's confusion. Who was the masked shinobi talked about? Surely, he found his answer after a long, tense-filled moment as Kinzen looked to his direction with a look pure regret. I'm sorry, old friend. Jiraiya felt his insides go cold. So he came. The Sojin spoke up softly, his voice quiet like the storm. Excellent work, Kinzen Dano. Oh, well, isn't this interesting? Orochimaru's laughter echoed. We have a spy in our midst. This is no laughing matter, Orochimaru. Kitahoshi rebuked severely. It appeared not even the calm and collected Hashikage could stand him. The serpent ignored him and threw his head back with laughter. I wonder who it is. Jiraiya's eyes remained wide with shock as he came to realize his mistake. It was all a trap. They had been counting on this happen on this, and they had managed to get Kinzen on their side. But why? It didn't make any sense. I understand. We might be friends, but we have different priorities when it comes down to it. Konoha will always come first for you, and Ishii will always first for me, no matter what the cost. Kinzen, you didn't. Jiraiya looked to his friend, no, his betrayer. How could he have been so blind? There had been signs back in Ishii, and there had been signs on the way to Shimo, but he had dismissed them and blindly believed in their friendship. How could have I been so stupid? As the shock settled in, Kuroki whispered. I'm so sorry, Jiraiya-sama. We had no choice. I only found out last night. The other bodyguards heard and quickly backed away. His reputation preceded him even now. It wouldn't save him now, though. There was no way he would get out of there without a fight. Who is it, Kinzen? Kakuza asked as the village leaders, save Sojin and Kitahoshi, rose of their seats. Their bodyguards joined them in anticipation. Oh, I know who it is. Orochimaru cackled gleefully as he licked his lips predatorily. There is only one Konoha shinobi I know Kinzen calls old friend. We have some old unfinished business, Jiraiya. Jiraiya stood alone now, a serious look on him as he undid his concealment jutsu. He glared at Orochimaru for a moment, and turned his gaze to Sojin and Kakuzu. Undoubtedly they had arranged the summit because they knew they could count on Konoha sending a spy. They could use it to get the support of the minor villages. They had played him perfectly. Sojin, Kakuzu, Akatsuki, they were all far more dangerous than he had imagined. They had to die. All of them. I never thought you would betray me, Kinzen. It's nothing personal, old friend. Kinzen said with a stony expression. You call me friend even now? Jiraiya laughed humorlessly. This wasn't going to be pretty. You are no friend of mine, he said coldly. He would have killed him then and there if he had the chance. Jiraiya the gallant. Sojin addressed him. I have heard a great deal about you. Your reputation truly precedes you. We hadn't expected you would show up. You have quite a bounty on your head. Kakuzu remarked confidently as he discarded his cloak and readied himself for combat. Jiraiya smirked as he put up a brave face. You're welcome to try and collect. Unfortunately, you're too valuable to collect. The Akatsuki member replied as he stretched his arms. Jiraiya looked for an exit. There were none that would let him get out of there without hassle. It looks like I'm going to have to fight my way out of here. This one might be a challenge even for you, Kakuzudano. Sojin interjected as he too finally rose from his chair. I shall assist. I've always wanted to test my mettle against a legendary shinobi. Nadara joined as his guards stood behind him. This should be fun. Jiraiya looked to Orochimaru. What about you, dear old teammate of mine? You going to join in too? I only came here at the behest of my minion, under the guarantee of safe passage of course. His fellow Sannin said with a look to Sojin and Kakuzu. Normally, I'd welcome the opportunity to kill you, but this body is a loner and not quite up to the challenge, I'm afraid. Then leave the ring and be gone, Snake. Kakuzu sneered. 5. Oh, right, the ring. Orochimaru said dramatically. How could I forget? Forgive me, Kakuzu, but I'm going to have renege on my promise. You see, I didn't actually bring it with me. What? The Akatsuki treasurer demanded, a dark look in his oddly colored eyes. Then rest assured you are next. How scary. Orochimaru mocked. I look forward to killing you personally, Kakuzu. But until then, you're going to have to excuse me. The serpent proceeded to disjoint his jaw and retch. A white snake emerged his throat and slithered away as the corpse of a Kusanine fell to the ground with a dull thud. A usually large and razor-sharp blade of grass impaled the rare reptile, killing it instantly. Sojin wore a furious expression on his aged and scared face. Don't bother, Jiraiya said with a mocking grin on his face. That's his Hibi no Shoji Jutsu. He had run into the snake possession technique a handful times already. It's a real bitch, isn't it? Who would have thought? Orochimaru's antics actually tickled him even now. Chi! I'll deal with him later, Kakuzu promised the Kusa leader. I told you not to trust him. A mistake on my part, I admit, Sojin replied as he regained his composure. Jiraiya looked to the table surrounded by shinobi. I guess this is where it gets ugly. There were about a dozen of them of the strongest shinobi amongst the minor shinobi villages, and just one of him. He would have to go all out. Mount Kunguran. His entire body ached as he climbed, his muscles screaming as he forced his body to keep going. He was nearly there. He could see the edge of the cliff. He was so close. The cold didn't bother him, he simply didn't pay it any attention. In fact, his body felt hot, like it was on fire. The veins in his hands and arms were bulged, his hands felt raw, he had chipped a few nails and his clothes were torn, but he kept going. He was nearly there. Yensha climbed next to him, making it look easy as his big eyes remained plastered on him. It was as though the young ape was too scared to talk out of fear he would somehow jinx his progress. You can talk if you want, Naruto grunted as he continued. Much of the climb had taken place in silence, much due to the howling winds. He had welcomed it at first. The silence gave him a lot of time to think. Too much time, perhaps. What? Yensha shouted over the wind. Did you say something? Naruto shook his head, tired beyond belief. It was a small wonder he managed to keep going, but he doubted he had the energy to carry a conversation. The climb was all the focused on. Forget it, Yen. Okay. Wait, did you just call me Yen? Naruto felt like both crying and banging his head against the rock. Yankazaru is long. I thought that's why you called me Yensha. The monkey said confused. That can get long too, Naruto said nearly a full minute later. He was too damn tired for small talk. Just forget it. The monkey bound over closer. Yensha is 6 letters, and so is your name. You're killing me, kid. Naruto cried pathetically. Can't you just let it go? I'm not a kid, Yensha said indignantly. I'm 7 years old. Naruto felt what little patience he had left leave him and snapped. That's exactly the age at which you'd normally be considered a kid. Bullshit. Watch your mouth. Naruto didn't know what possessed him to chastise his new companion, other than the fact he was extremely aware of how young he was. You can be really moody, you know that? Yensha stuck his tongue at him and climbed ahead of him. They continued to bicker for a while. Naruto knew he couldn't afford to waste his energy on something so foolish, but he didn't like giving Yensha the final word. It was childish, he knew, but maturity be damned, he wasn't going to be silenced by a monkey less than half his age. Before he knew it, he found himself closer to the top than he had been so far. The temperature was picking up. You did that on purpose, didn't you? He looked to the monkey. Distracting me like that, so I wouldn't be tired. Gotcha! Yancha laughed in a shrieking fashion. Naruto rolled his eyes, but smiled nonetheless. I guess you did. Minutes later his hands, his raw and bloody hands, finally gripped the last ridge. He pulled himself over the top of Mount Kunguran, onto a flat plateau, breathing heavily, but happy enough he felt like crying as he rolled onto his back. He was exhausted to the point of nausea, hungry, and dehydrated, but he had made it. Finally! He muttered under his breath as he closed his eyes. Shimo no Kuni, the castle lay in ruins. Black clouds of smoke billowed to the open sky. The ruins of the royal estate were swept by fire and oil. The carcass of a giant red toad lied a distance away, its stomach torn open by countless wounds, its giant shield cracked and Tsunade discarded. Where there was once a meeting hall there was now a crater dug deep into the ground. A fierce battle had taken place, and the environment reflected it. Several dozen bodies were strewn over the castle-turned-battlefield, mainly castle guards, and a few shinobi of Ain, Kusa and Shimo. Jiraiya lied on his back in the snow, blood flowing under him, and on the verge of unconsciousness. Kakuza plowed through the snow, casually picking up his right arm and reattaching it as he neared the toad sage. He looked worse for wear, and none too pleased as he recalled his specters of black. Only one had managed to survive. He managed to destroy 3 of my puppets. It was fortunate we outnumbered him. The shogun approached, seemingly unscathed though tired. Kakuza didn't acknowledge the statement, though it were true. What are we going to do with him? He asked instead. If we kill him, Konoha will know it was us. We make him disappear, Sojin said as he adjusted his kimono. The cold was getting to his old bones. We can move him to Kusa and keep him there. I will put my best interrogators on him to uncover as much information as we can. Kakuza looked around the plain of white. Takigakure fled during the commotion. I'll make sure Gyurikami keeps his mouth shut. Then I will see to it Hoshi, Ishi and Yuki stay quiet for now. Sojin released a deep sigh, seeming even older for a moment. I must admit, Jiraiya the Gallant was a surprise. It would be poor form to insist on relocating and continuing the summit now. I leave that to you. Kakuzu agreed with a nod as he extended his hand and reached for his cloak several dozen feet away and plucked it from the burning oil. As soon as I get Takigakure in line, I'll advise Pain to let me deal with Orochimaru. And what of Kinzen? The Kusa leader inquired as they both observed Kinzen from a distance. The Ishi leader stared at Jiraiya with a morose look, his immense guilt visible even from a distance. It's too late for him to back out now, Kakuza said confidently. He is no fool. Even if he turned on us now, Konoha would still crush him for his betrayal. He's ours now. The Akatsuki treasurer put on the tattered remains of his cloak. If necessary, promise him the Yambi or Gobi for his cooperation. Jiraiya fought to stay conscious, though he knew it was futile. He had been overwhelmed despite his best efforts and his wounds were severe. He had failed. Forgive me, Tsunade. Naruto, Jiraiya whispered as he slipped into unconsciousness.